Chapter 1. Being mistaken for a transcendent being in this world. In the southern wilderness realm, situated at the edge of the continent, a labyrinth of mountains intertwines, encasing an entire world in a formidable embrace. It resembles an isolated island, suspended in the vastness of existence. Thus, this realm has been aptly named the Southern Wilderness. The inhabitants of the Southern Wilderness remain oblivious to the existence of anything beyond the towering mountains that encircle them. No soul has ever traversed these formidable barriers to glimpse the world beyond. For the denizens of the Southern Wilderness, the expansive territory within the 100,000 mountains constitutes their sole universe. Within the vast expanse of the Southern Wilderness, 5 grand empires stand tall, jointly ruling over this world. These 5 empires hold absolute dominion over the beings within, wielding the power of life and death, as if they were colossal mountains looming over the populace. Despite the rise of formidable factions in later generations, the supremacy of the 5 empires has never wavered. Aside from these secular powers, numerous martial sects are also established within the Southern Wilderness. Countless martial practitioners cultivate their skills under the stringent rules set by the 5 empires and various sections. The known martial realms are classified from weakest to strongest into 7 distinct tiers: the third-rate, second-rate, first-rate, acquired, innate, master, and grandmaster, each with its own rigid hierarchy that proves difficult to transcend. Third-rate warriors represent the lowest echelon of martial practitioners, akin to ordinary commoners. Most of these third-rate martial artists find themselves engaged in arduous tasks, such as being bodyguards or law enforcers, toiling under the demands of others. In stark contrast, grandmasters, who occupy the pinnacle of martial prowess in the Southern Wilderness, enjoy a different status altogether. Not only are they revered by the populace, but even nobles and elders of sects treat them with utmost respect, often going to great lengths to invite them into their ranks as esteemed guests. It is precisely for this reason that martial practitioners from the 5 empires strive relentlessly to ascend the ranks. Alas, as he perused the same content repeatedly, Chu Feng found himself feeling nauseated. In the northernly kingdom, nestled in the Jiangnan region, lies a dense forest outside Dongli City. This forest is renowned as the most famous thicket in Dongli City. Spanning a vast area, it encircles the city itself. The outer fringes of the forest are frequently patrolled by ferocious beasts, deterring ordinary citizens from venturing close. Even third-rate martial artists only dare to linger on the outskirts, avoiding the depths of the forest. Consequently, this once thriving forest has remained untouched for over a decade, evolving into a place akin to a forbidden zone. Yet, deep within this seldom-trodden thicket stands a humble thatched cottage. Inside the cottage, a young man reclines with one leg crossed over the other, perusing the few books scattered about the room. Chu Feng closes the book with a sigh and steps out of the cottage. He glances around at the verdant expanse of the forest, his dark eyes reflecting a blend of complexity and confusion. A month prior, he had crossed over into this world, only to find himself unfortunate enough to land in this desolate, uninhabited wilderness. The forest teems with ferocious beasts, with tigers, leopards, and wolves lurking, their haunting calls echoing through the trees. Especially at night, one can barely peek out without encountering countless pairs of glowing eyes watching from the shadows. Had he not been fleet of foot, he would likely have been digested and transformed into nourishment for the trees of the forest by now. Fortunately, fate did not entirely forsake him during his flight. Chu Feng stumbled upon a humble, thatched cottage nestled within the woods. This dwelling was ensconced by towering trees, rendering it exceedingly secluded. Initially, residing in this straw hut offered a sense of freedom and ease. After all, wild beasts rarely intruded, and he could sustain himself on the rabbits and wild chickens that roamed the forest. However, as Chu Feng's vigilant gaze swept across the relatively open area of the woods, he remained acutely aware of the lurking tigers and leopards, poised in the shadows, waiting for their prey to lower their guard. Should he inadvertently reveal even a hint of vulnerability, he could easily fall victim to a ferocious beast. Resting his chin in his hand, his expression turned contemplative, and he paced back and forth, torn by indecision. Should I truly take the risk? He pondered. Am I to remain in this remote wilderness, waiting for death? Although this location was safe It was devoid of any companionship, not a single soul to converse with. For a young man who had traversed from a new era, this solitude was utterly unbearable, truly insufferable. Beyond the tedium, the matter of sustenance posed a significant dilemma. After all, wild chickens and rabbits were not available every day, and luck could not be counted upon indefinitely. Should he continue to wait idly, he might very well starve in this desolate place. Lost in thought, he remained oblivious to the shadowy figure that approached him from the dense thicket behind. The youth swallowed hard, his gaze darting cautiously from side to side. As he surveyed his surroundings, he ventured deeper into the forest, seemingly encouraging himself with whispered words. The texts say that reclusive masters often reside in tranquil, secluded forests. In the domains of such sages, fierce beasts dare not tread, and calamities do not intrude. Just as he finished speaking, the youth halted in his tracks. His eyes widened in astonishment as he beheld a solitary thatched cottage standing silently amidst the stillness of the woods. With a surge of excitement, he lowered his gaze and, suddenly holding his breath, exclaimed with uncontainable joy, "I've found it." Before the cottage stood a young man clad in a gray robe, gazing at the clouds with his back turned to him. The youth, donned in simple clothing and straw sandals, exuded an air of tranquility, seemingly indifferent to the world around him like an ancient pine standing apart from the tumult of existence. In a flurry, the youth retrieved a weathered tome from his waist, trembling fingers flipping through its pages as his eyes darted between the text and the young man. A solitary dwelling in the depths of the forest, clad in simple attire and straw sandals, residing alone. This must be a reclusive master. Here, in the heart of the mountains, where solitude reigns and the transcendent dwell, there was no sign of the ferocious beasts that roamed elsewhere. Each detail in the tome aligned perfectly with the figure before him. The narrative had not deceived him indeed. Such reclusive masters existed in this world. The youth gazed intently at the figure of the young man before him, a fervor igniting within his eyes, dispelling any lingering hesitation as he cast aside the book in his grasp with a decisive snap. Transforming his demeanor, he shed the panic that had previously gripped him, showing no regard for the perilous depths of the dense forest surrounding them, a realm fraught with the dangers chronicled in the tales he had read. In that moment, the only focus of his gaze was the young man ahead. With unwavering determination, the youth sprinted to the young man's side. Before the latter could turn, he slid to his knees, his eyes ablaze with fervor as he fervently proclaimed, "I am the son of the Lord of Dongli City, known as Xiao Huahua. Huahua stands before a master of the world, and I humbly beseech you, esteemed elder, to accept me as your disciple." Chapter 2. The Tenfold Return System Activated. Yet, the novice gift pack is absent. In the serene forest, an enveloping silence pervaded the atmosphere. Only the tall, slender trees danced gently in the breeze, creating a soft, rustling melody. After a moment of contemplation, Chu Feng, alerted by the sound, turned around and was momentarily taken aback, a mix of astonishment and joy illuminating his features. Before him knelt a young man, adorned with a golden crown, dressed in an elegant dark blue robe with flowing sleeves, and wearing black shoes embellished with cloud patterns. The youth possessed a delicate visage, albeit marked by a trace of fragility, suggesting an inherent vulnerability. Nevertheless, his attire hinted at a background of affluence or nobility. As he gazed at the young man, the tension on Chu Feng's face melted away completely. His eyes sparkled with delight, trembling with exhilaration. This was a person, a living being. Chu Feng was beset by an irresistible desire to weep. Having roamed this realm for a month, he had been cut off from humanity for the same length of time. The youth before him was the only other living being he had come across in this peculiar world. It was reminiscent of traversing a barren desert for 7 days, only to finally stumble upon an oasis. How could he not be filled with joy? Yet, a strange expression flitted across Chu Feng's countenance. Why did this young man suddenly kneel and express a desire to become his disciple? Did he truly bear the semblance of some reclusive master? Chu Feng cast a perplexed glance at his reflection, his confusion intensifying. Was there some sort of mistake? He was but an ordinary soul fated to meet his end alone in this profound, shadowy forest, stripped of any skills or possessions. Upon entering this enchanting realm, He had yearned to master the art of martial combat. As a flurry of thoughts danced through his mind, a sudden, chilling electronic voice pierced through his contemplation. Ding! Detection of a disciple aspiring to learn. Congratulations to the host for activating the system. Ding! The tenfold return system is at your service. Chu Feng's eyes widened as he surveyed his surroundings. The voice appeared to echo in his ears, yet the young man on the ground remained bowed deeply, utterly unresponsive. It suddenly occurred to him that the voice originated from within his own mind. A surge of exhilaration coursed through him, and he could hardly suppress the smile that graced his lips as he mused, "Oh heavens, after such a prolonged wait, my system has finally manifested. An entire month, one whole month." He had observed no indications of activity and had begun to entertain the notion that he was bereft of a system. As this realization dawned upon him, a resplendent azure light flashed before his eyes, illuminating a diaphanous screen. Words began to manifest distinctly upon the surface of the screen. Tenfold return system. When the host imparts skills to others, the system will automatically track and record their progress. Upon a successful completion of their training, the host shall receive tenfold the results of the practitioner. Note: should the recipient of the imparted skills experience significant advancement, the host will also gain tenfold improvement, provided the disciple possesses immense fortune. As Chu Feng's gaze traversed the text upon the screen, his eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Goodness gracious! With a tenfold return, if he could instruct numerous disciples, would he not ascend to invincibility? Moreover, achieving subsequent tenfold enhancements from the advancements of his disciples would enable him to ascend to the status of a martial arts master without exerting any effort. Before him, Xiao Huahua remained prostrate, utterly motionless, his tension palpable. Yet, Chu Feng remained unperturbed, diligently suppressing his exhilaration and calming his emotions as he once again directed his gaze towards the azure screen, contemplating inwardly. Surely, the time has arrived? Indeed, it is the moment when the system grants the novice gift package. Should the system generously bestow a supreme technique, he could impart it to his disciple. Once the disciple mastered it, would he not soar to great heights with a jubilant cry? At that juncture, becoming a world-class powerhouse, marrying a stunning empress, and reaching the zenith of existence would merely be a matter of time. However, as time wore on, the exuberance on Chu Feng's visage gradually became rigid, until it dissipated entirely. After the span of half an incense stick, the azure screen remained unchanged. Having gazed at it for that duration, he found himself in a state of confusion. Where had the novice gift package vanished to? Why was this lamentable system devoid of such a fundamental offering? Without the gift package, he possessed no skills to impart to others. It is imperative to acknowledge that in this realm, martial arts techniques are exceedingly rare treasures. Historical accounts reveal that various clans and sects regard these techniques as their very essence, never to be disclosed. They're not something one can acquire casually. Furthermore, the techniques available in the marketplace are predominantly of mediocre quality. Apart from those who lack the means to pursue martial arts, no one would even cast a glance at them. Such offerings naturally lack allure, let alone serve as material for instructing disciples. Who would be inclined to learn? As an ordinary individual, where might Chu Feng seek out techniques? What could he proffer in return? His emotions fluctuated between joy and despair, rendering him immobile, unaware that the youth before him had cast a fleeting glance. As half a stick of incense elapsed, Xiaohua stole a glance at Chu Feng, only to swiftly avert his gaze, brow furrowed in contemplation. Is it possible that the master harbors displeasure towards me? Having bowed for such an extended period, this reclusive master remained as unyielding as a wooden effigy, neither acquiescing nor rejecting. He stood in tranquil silence. This only served to amplify Xiao Huahua's disquiet. With his head bowed, he anxiously mused. He has neither dismissed me nor verbally rebuffed my presence. Suddenly, his eyes widened in epiphany. Might it be that I have inadvertently offended the master? Or does he deem my aptitude insufficient, hesitating to take me on as a disciple? Could it be, as the legends suggest, that the master is indeed evaluating my character? As the word legends echoed in his mind, Xiao Huahua quivered, his thoughts abruptly severed. A sudden recollection of the tome he had carelessly cast aside flooded his mind. He could not restrain himself from smiting his forehead in exasperation, muttering under his breath, "Xiao Huahua, how could you be so imprudent?" Did not the text proclaim that when one seeks a master, it is essential to articulate one's intentions and present a token of esteem? The narrative further elucidated that the mightier the master, the more they cherish such formalities. The master must be anticipating my offering. It is I who acted with undue haste. Such a significant endeavor as the pursuit of knowledge must not be devoid of proper decorum. Shall I refrain from taking the initiative? Must I await the master's personal address? Upon attaining this realization, Xiao Huahua eagerly leaned forward, his hands fervently exploring his person. He sifted through his sleeves, collar, and waist, meticulously inspecting every nook and cranny. The precious items he managed to unearth soon rested prominently in his palms. With a resolute clench of his teeth, he presented them to Chu Feng with a respectful bow, saying, "Master, I implore you to accept your disciple. I am aware that these humble possessions may not pique your distinguished interest. However, they represent my heartfelt intentions. I earnestly hope you will graciously accept them, Master." Observing the boy's sudden display, Chu Feng turned his gaze towards the offerings. He beheld a 7-inch-long red ginseng and a pill gently shimmering beneath the dappled sunlight that filtered through the leaves. Chapter 3. A Triumvirate of Years? The Forsaken Champion. Chu Feng examined the items held by the young boy. A 7-inch-long ginseng emanating a deep crimson hue. A pill of indeterminate grade that nonetheless radiated a rich aura revitalizing to the spirit, and a century-old blood ginseng accompanied by a pill. This young man appears to possess considerable wealth, through the knowledge acquired from the tomes within the modest dwelling. Chu Feng had gained insight into the living conditions of the common people in this realm. It was rare for ordinary families to part with such treasures. Only the nobility or powerful factions could afford to bestow such items upon their young heirs. As Chu Feng's thoughts spiraled, a subtle smile graced his lips. Yet he remained contemplative, musing, why not feign acceptance of this apprenticeship gift? His yearning was not fueled by avarice for the blood ginseng or the elixir. His gaze lingered upon the boy, meticulously observing his attire and the artifacts he had unveiled. It was apparent that the youth hailed from a lineage of considerable wealth and power. Perhaps Xiao Huahua's family was home to formidable martial masters. There existed a possibility to embrace this lad and contrive a means for his family's guardians to guide them from this forest. No, no. As this notion flitted through his mind, Chu Feng fervently shook his head in repudiation. He scrutinized the boy, knitting his brow in contemplation. Indeed, while the youth's family was affluent, that also suggested they would possess keen discernment. What if they effortlessly perceived that Chu Feng was naught but a charlatan, bereft of worldly wisdom? Would they not exact a dire retribution upon him? Shaking his head, Chu Feng let out a profound sigh. That notion was promptly cast aside. He must remain steadfast in his principles, resisting the allure of temptation. In this merciless realm governed by the survival of the fittest, morality and law existed only as fleeting illusions. One must navigate cautiously. A single misstep could lead to dire consequences. Unbeknownst to Chu Feng, his demeanor had not eluded Xiao Huahua's keen observation. The still kneeling youth's eyes flickered with traces of panic and despair. Unconsciously, the corners of his mouth turned downward. As he gazed upon the reclusive master before him, his trembling eyes bore a singular thought. It is over. All is lost. The venerable one shook his head, reluctant to accept me as a disciple. Indeed, those who reside beyond the realm of the ordinary are not easily swayed to take on apprentices. Seemingly struck by a revelation, Xiao Huahua's gaze became resolute, and with a heart as steadfast as if confronting death, he closed his eyes and boldly proclaimed, "Esteemed senior, I recognize that you regard me with disdain. However, I possess compelling motivations to grow stronger. I implore you, accept me as your disciple. I beseech you." As he spoke, he bowed deeply to Chu Feng, striking his forehead against the ground repeatedly. Hud, hud, hud. His head met the earth with a resounding impact. When the youth raised his head once more, a crimson stain had formed on his forehead, droplets of blood seeping forth. Chu Feng was momentarily taken aback, his prior thoughts momentarily forgotten. This youth, with such a countenance, surely harbors an intriguing story? Before he could articulate a single word, the youth, enveloped in melancholy, began to speak. Esteemed senior, I am Xiao Huahua, the progeny of the Lord of Dongli City. My father, prior to my birth, had already pledged my hand to the mysterious sect of Sangzhou. From a tender age, I've been devoid of any martial aptitude, despite my relentless endeavors over the years. I have scarcely attained a mere third-rate level of skill. In stark contrast, my fiancé, the young lord of the mysterious sect, has achieved first-rate strength at the tender age of 16 and is now diligently pursuing the innate realm. The chasm between our abilities is immense. She regards me with disdain and has even journeyed to Dongli City to dissolve our engagement. At this moment, Xiao Huahua's physique grew taut, his hands firmly clutching the earth, his voice quivering ever so slightly. My father has consistently held reputation in the highest regard. Being dismissed in such a manner has rendered me the most profound subject of ridicule in Dongli City, and the Lord's household has been stripped of all honor. To safeguard the remnants of dignity, I have torn asunder the marriage contract, willingly dissolving the engagement and establishing a 3-year ultimatum. Xiao Huahua fixed his gaze upon Chu Feng, his eyes brimming with resolve. I pledge to surpass that woman within 3 years, restoring the last remnant of honor for the Lord's house of Dongli City. Suddenly, he appeared despondent, bowing his head. Yet alas, I am but a fool. 2.5 years have already elapsed, leaving merely 6 months ahead. And my cultivation remained stagnant. The youth collapsed to the ground, summoning all his strength to declare, if the esteemed one would deign to accept Huahua, the tributes I present today are but a mere fraction. I am prepared to offer all, with both hands, to the esteemed one. Though Xiao Huahua spoke with deep sorrow, as if the annulment weighed heavily on his mind, Chu Feng, witnessing his prostration, struggled to contain his laughter. Internally, he could not help but chuckle. Is it truly possible? An annulment alongside a 3-year covenant? This bears a remarkable resemblance to the experiences of the protagonist from a certain literary masterpiece of my previous existence. Having encountered myriad annulment scenarios across various online narratives, the unfolding of such a situation before him still struck him as amusing. 2 youths, scarcely exceeding the tender age of 17, meandered about with a marriage certificate in hand, their antics becoming the subject of local gossip as they proclaimed a 3-year pact. While this may appear reasonable in their realm, for Chu Feng, a contemporary individual catapulted into this world, it felt exceedingly awkward. Yet, despite his discomfort, he swiftly regained his composure. In the recesses of his mind, Chu Feng pondered a marriage annulment, a 3-year agreement. Could this young man before me truly be the fortunate individual as the system has described? His gaze was steadfastly fixed upon the youth, examining him with meticulous attention. Should he choose to take the boy under his guidance and bestow upon him esoteric techniques, he would be rewarded manifold, enabling him to swiftly elevate himself from obscurity to prominence. Such an opportunity would undoubtedly facilitate the future acceptance of disciples. To speak candidly, Chu Feng experienced a profound surge of temptation. He regarded the youth much like one would behold a paragon of beauty, overwhelmed by an insatiable desire to extend his hand. However, he soon found himself deflated, releasing a heavy sigh. The most pressing dilemma lay in the fact that he possessed nothing. A master craftsman cannot create a dish without the necessary ingredients. Bereft of resources, he had nothing to impart. The promise of tenfold rewards lingered enticingly. Yet he felt utterly impotent. Abruptly, he heard the venerable figure before him exhale a sigh and shake his head. Xiao Huahua, increasingly agitated, suddenly found solace and, in despair, lamented, "Is it still insurmountable?" With that, he rose unsteadily, his eyes clouded, and offered a self-effacing smile to Chu Feng, saying, "Esteemed senior, I have indeed exceeded my limits. A person of your stature would undoubtedly not condescend to acknowledge a practitioner of my mediocre caliber, who has labored for years yet remains merely a third-rate martial artist." With those words, he turned to depart. Chapter 4. Embrace Audacity. Forge a path to cultivation. In the depths of the forest, the young man departed, his spirits low. Chu Feng regarded the vanishing figure, his brow knitting tighter as his hands balled into fists. He cast another glance around his environment. Having navigated this realm for over a month, Xiao Huahua was the only soul he had encountered. If Xiao Huahua were to leave now, would he ever encounter another unforeseen presence in this secluded woodland? Would he find any opportunity to escape this verdant labyrinth? Furthermore, to have entered a world of martial arts only to find himself bereft of any prospect of becoming a cultivator or a formidable entity was profoundly disheartening. Was he simply fated to wallow in despair with the system? He resolutely refused to resign himself to such a destiny, as he observed the boy recede into the distance. An indomitable determination sparked within him. Is not a cultivation method simply that, a method? I steadfastly reject any contrary notion. In my previous existence, I voraciously consumed every fragment of literature pertaining to this topic, having immersed myself in a plethora of novels and their diverse cultivation techniques. It stands to reason that I can summon one from the ether. The more he pondered, the more his eyes sparkled with brilliance and his confidence burgeoned. With the extensive reading I have undertaken, I am undoubtedly capable of elucidating the principles of innate and acquired realms, even those tiers that surpass grandmasters. With his thoughts meticulously arranged, Chu Feng hesitated no further. He would take action, with his gaze fixed upon the figure that had receded beyond 30 meters. Nearly fading from view, Chu Feng stood with an air of pretended profundity, hands clasped behind his back, clearing his throat with a deliberate cough. His voice, tinged with a hint of melancholy, echoed through the forest. With the sun and moon at my command, I pluck the stars. There exists no one in this world who can rival me. I have lived in seclusion for many years, desiring not to meddle in the affairs of the world. Yet, I did not foresee such a fateful encounter. At that moment, Xiao Huahua, who had been contemplating leaving, experienced a sudden jolt, halting in his tracks and turning back in astonishment. He gazed upon the sage's unwavering expression, pondering briefly before shaking his head and declaring, "Very well. If that is the case, then I shall accept you." Upon hearing these words, the despondency on Xiao Huahua's face vanished entirely. His murky eyes shimmered with a revitalized brilliance, and his steps quickened as he hurried back to Chu Feng, kneeling before him with a resounding thud, bowing his head thrice in exuberance. Disciple pays homage to the master. Thank you, master, for graciously accepting me as your disciple. A radiant smile illuminated Xiao Huahua's face, his gaze fervent as he lifted his eyes to the young man. Although the sage appeared youthful, his presence emanated a tranquil profundity, concealing unfathomable strength, rendering him indistinguishable from an ordinary individual devoid of any cultivation. Yet, his demeanor exuded an air of detachment, as if he were above the trivialities of the world. This only served to fortify Xiao Huahua's belief. The sage before him was undeniably extraordinary, surpassing anyone he had ever encountered. It is frequently asserted that those easily content, akin to partially filled vessels, are inclined to showcase their abilities, yearning for the world to acknowledge their strength. In stark contrast, true masters embody humility, reverting to simplicity, veiling their brilliance amidst the vast expanse of the commonplace world. This concept of the extraordinary being concealed within the ordinary resonated deeply with Xiao Huahua. As he pondered this, he observed Chu Feng with increasing intensity, his very breath revealing a hint of disarray. Even the illustrious leader of the Floating Cloud sect, an elite innate master, could scarcely maintain such an unobtrusive demeanor, presenting as an ordinary individual. Could they? It is said that a great master fosters exceptional disciples. Being accepted as a protege of such an unparalleled sage would undoubtedly endow him with the prowess to confront the audacious young lord of the Floating Cloud sect in the competition set to unfold in 6 months. Unbeknownst to Chu Feng, the boy's contemplations lingered in the air as he took a brief pause, articulating slowly, "Disciple, rise." With eyes partially closed, he observed Xiao Huahua as he stood. Embracing an air of enigma, Chu Feng proclaimed, Now that you are my disciple, it is imperative that we cultivate a mutual understanding. Xiao Huahua, brimming with enthusiasm, responded, Master, I am prepared to answer any inquiries you may have without hesitation. Maintaining his poise, Chu Feng acknowledged him with a nod of approval. Very well, I shall assess your knowledge. What is the present condition of martial artists in this realm? And to what extraordinary heights may they aspire? Chu Feng narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing the young man adorned in exquisite garments, eagerly anticipating his response. His prior understanding of martial artists in this realm was derived solely from the modest records housed within his dwelling, merely grasping the rudimentary hierarchy without a profound comprehension. He remained unaware of the remarkable powers associated with the various realms. It was imperative for him to first discern the capabilities of the corresponding martial artists before he could aptly formulate a suitable martial technique. Otherwise, should he endeavor to compose an elaborate tome like the Great Wilderness Prisoning Finger, only for the recipient to be ensnared in trifling weeds, it would undoubtedly become a source of derision. After a moment of reflection, Xiao Huahua expressed, in the domain of third-rate martial arts, the distinction from ordinary individuals is negligible. One possesses the agility to traverse rooftops. Postnatal martial artists can project their aura outward, capable of vanquishing adversaries from distance. As for innate martial artists, they can emulate celestial beings, soaring through the skies, single-handedly defeating multitudes. At this moment, Xiao Huahua's gaze intensified with fervor as he looked skyward, filled with admiration. Concerning the legendary Grandmaster realm, one can envelop oneself in a protective aura, impervious to blades and spears. With the strength of a solitary individual, one can confront thousands, obliterating vast armies and altering the course of battle. This exemplifies the essence of genuine mastery. Upon hearing Xiao Huahua's remarks, Chu Feng nodded with an apparent sense of satisfaction. Yet internally, he grappled with uncertainty. According to my naive disciple, the martial prowess in this realm is indeed formidable, far exceeding that of the previous martial domains I have encountered. Which martial world should I select as a blueprint to construct my martial arts? Should it be the wind and cloud realm? Chu Feng dismissed this notion, considering its power inadequate for supremacy. What are the heavenly dragon 8 parts? This appeared even more distant. Perhaps the Dolua realm? His eyes momentarily glimmered, only to fade once more as he shook his head. The martial prowess within this realm was rather enigmatic, and its efficacy might not surpass that of the martial cultivators in his own world. Furthermore, the techniques often necessitated specific conditions for cultivation, which might not align with this world. Nevertheless, this contemplation ignited a spark of inspiration within him. His eyes shone with newfound clarity. Indeed, the realm of martial cultivation appears lacking, and the exalted martial world leaves much to be desired. Thus, I shall seek enlightenment from the domain of immortality. If Qi exists, it is highly probable that spiritual energy does as well in this world. Once this young man embarks on the path of immortal techniques, he shall become invincible here. With this contemplation, he experienced an overwhelming sense of pride and pondered. In such circumstances, perhaps I could attain immortality and ascend to the status of an ancestor. After considerable reflection, Chu Feng made the decision to devise the martial techniques. Ultimately, it was merely a construct derived from his recollections and the limited synopses of literature, much akin to the martial artists portrayed in modern cinema, refining their abilities based on graphic novel tales, a rather implausible undertaking. Given the low probability of success, why not embrace a touch of audacity? Chapter 5. The Path of Qi Cultivation, also known as Immortal Cultivation. Beneath the dense foliage of the forest, Xiao Huahua raised his gaze. The master to whom he had recently pledged his allegiance abruptly looked skyward, a fleeting glimmer of melancholy crossing his features. Just as Xiao Huahua was enveloped in bewilderment, he observed his master regain his composure. Standing with his hands clasped behind him, his tone was grave as he regarded Xiao Huahua, seemingly lamenting. It has been eons since I last ventured into the world. Has the external realm truly been reduced to but the path of martial artists? Upon hearing those sorrow-laden words and observing the lone figure before him, Xiao Huahua was immediately taken aback, a shiver coursing down his spine. His gaze, directed at Chu Feng, was imbued with astonishment and disbelief, as if he had just stumbled upon a concept that defied all comprehension. Xiao Huahua shook his head in bewilderment, his words slightly disordered. Is it not chronicled that, since time immemorial, this has perpetually been the path of warriors? Can it be that, apart from warriors, there exists another avenue of cultivation within this realm? He stared, eyes wide, uncertainly anticipating the sage's reply. Observing the boy's demeanor, Chu Feng felt a surge of mirth within. Splendid, the lad has taken a bait. With this declaration, the boy had already begun to embrace the notion to a considerable extent. His status as a transcendent sage would be further affirmed in the boy's eyes due to these groundbreaking assertions. Chu Feng maintained an expression of indifference, his demeanor remaining detached. However, the corner of his mouth subtly curled into a scornful smirk. The paths of the world are bifurcated into the great way and the lesser way. The pursuit of martial cultivation is ultimately but a lesser path. Even if one devotes their entire existence to it, they shall remain constrained by its limitations, unable to genuinely ascend to the zenith of existence. As you have indicated, the ultimate threshold of martial cultivation is merely the so-called Grandmaster realm. The power you revere is nothing more than the capacity to vanquish an army, and nothing beyond that. Nothing beyond that. These 4 words struck Xiao Huahua like a bolt of lightning, leaving him momentarily bewildered. The exalted beings he idolized, and indeed the entirety of Dongli City and the South Wilderness realm, were reduced to this mere appraisal in the eyes of his master. With this contemplation, his breath quickened, and his eyes sparkled with fervor. He gazed intently at the man before him. If the Grandmaster was indeed nothing beyond that, then what realm did this figure before him, his master, genuinely inhabit? He found it nearly inconceivable to comprehend. Clearing his throat, Chu Feng proceeded. This lesser path pales in comparison to the Great Way. Upon hearing this, Xiao Huahua could no longer suppress his enthusiasm. Master, what then is this Great Way, and what experiences does a practitioner of the Great Way encounter? Observing the increasingly animated Xiao Huahua, Chu Feng smiled gently. The Great Way is the path of qi refinement. If one can embark upon the Great Way, then, at that moment, your so-called Grandmaster will appear as nothing more than a mere child in your presence. The path of qi refinement? Xiao Huahua softly repeated these 4 characters to himself, while his mind raced to gather any insights related to this notion. Yet, he discovered nothing within the extensive collection of books he had perused or the myriad of experiences he had undergone, failing to establish any link to the term qi refinement. This enigmatic phrase had graced his awareness for the very first time. Bowing his head, he murmured, "Is it possible that the path of qi refinement is reserved solely for the most distinguished of experts?" The more he pondered this, the more he embraced the concept. Although he was merely the youthful lord of a modest city, he undoubtedly transcended the commonplace individuals who might encounter such formidable entities. The fact that he had never come across this cultivation technique during his upbringing strongly implied that it was likely a secret reserved for the uppermost ranks of masters. As these reflections crystallized within his mind, the journey of qi refinement became increasingly enigmatic and profound to him. Yet here he stood, a mere martial artist who had not even reached the 2nd tier, confronted with such extraordinary phenomena. How could he possibly maintain his composure? Xiao Huahua, filled with fervor, inquired, "May I ask, Master, how terrifying is the path of qi refinement?" Observing the fervent demeanor of Xiao Huahua, Chu Feng felt a swell of elation within himself. It was essential to instill in this young man the belief that the path of qi refinement was not only a distant journey, but also a domain that even the most distinguished martial artists found arduous to access. In this manner, should he fail to impart the technique, Xiao Huahua would inevitably seek the fault within himself. In the future, he would undoubtedly lament his lack of innate talent, rationalizing that such a formidable path was understandably challenging to traverse. Yet, he would remain oblivious to the fact that the true issue lay with Chu Feng himself. Thus, Chu Feng had cleverly established a contingency plan. Once he had sufficiently cultivated Xiao Huahua's reverence for the path of qi refinement, Chu Feng began to elucidate. The path of qi refinement is infinite. The initial stage, primarily centered on qi refinement, is referred to as the qi refinement realm. As he spoke, Chu Feng raised two fingers towards Xiao Hua. If one could successfully break through to the qi refinement realm, their lifespan will be significantly prolonged, allowing them to enjoy an additional 2 decades of life. Upon attaining the zenith of qi refinement, one may potentially extend their life by an additional 3 decades. As Chu Feng extended his 3 fingers, Xiao Hua remained in a state of astonished silence. He comprehended that martial arts could enhance one's physical constitution, enabling practitioners to evade maladies, often culminating in an elongated lifespan. However, even martial artists are ultimately bound by the constraints of their mortal forms. Upon reaching a certain age, they are destined to depart from this world. He had merely heard whispers that perhaps the Grandmaster level could grant such an extension of life. Yet that merely afforded an extra 50 or 60 years. Never anything as lavish as a few decades. The qi refinement stage, as articulated by his master, promised such a formidable possibility. Unbeknownst to him, Xiao Huahua's desire for the pursuit of qi refinement had fervently intensified. Seizing the opportunity, Chu Feng articulated, "Once you transcend into the qi refinement realm, you will possess the ability to externalize your spiritual energy. The potency of this spiritual energy far exceeds what you refer to as the internal power of postnatal martial artists. Upon reaching the mid-stage of qi refinement, one can soar through the skies on a sword, perform mystical arts, manipulate the spiritual energies of heaven and earth, and unleash extraordinary capabilities beyond your wildest imaginings." At this juncture, Chu Feng paused for an extended moment, observing the glimmer of anticipation in Xiao Huahua's eyes, teasing his curiosity before he continued. Thus, the path of qi refinement is also revered as the path of immortality. Xiao Huahua stood in sheer astonishment, his breath uneven and his thoughts momentarily suspended as he murmured to himself, "Does merely entering the realm of qi refinement truly surpass the prowess of postnatal martial artists?" At the intermediary stage, one could soar through the heavens. Achieving the first stage of qi refinement bestows an additional 3 decades of life. In a daze, Xiao Huahua silently revisited these reflections, as though he were on the verge of grasping an elusive truth. Qi refinement, the pathway to immortality. Suddenly, a glimmer ignited in his eyes, illuminating the depths of his understanding, as if a momentous epiphany had unfolded. In awe, he turned to his master and inquired, "Master, could it be that the path of qi refinement holds the key to the legendary immortals?" Chapter 6, Master, could it be that you are an immortal? In the forest, the world succumbed to a profound stillness. A gentle breeze caressed his face, yet it failed to soothe Xiao Huahua's tense muscles. Instead, it elicited an involuntary shudder. He fixed his gaze upon his master, acutely attuned to the thunderous beating of his own heart, his eyes ablaze with fervent anticipation. If this so-called path of qi refinement truly led to the legendary immortals, then today he might have unearthed something extraordinary. This path of qi refinement could potentially incite the 5 great empires into a frenzy, igniting the entirety of the southern wilderness. After all, it was an unprecedented, unparalleled method that transcended the heavens and the earth. Such a method could potentially alter the enduring supremacy of the 5 great empires, which have remained immutable for millennia in the southern wilderness. At last, under the weight of such ardent gazes, the young man, adorned with a gentle smile, inclined his head slightly and responded, "Naturally, to pursue immortality, to seek immortality. If one cannot ultimately ascend to become an immortal, then what purpose does it serve?" His words, though simple, resonated with tremendous impact, striking the mind like a bolt of lightning. Chu Feng's proclamation prompted Xiao Huahua to recoil in disbelief. With his mouth agape, he appeared astonished, murmuring to himself as he shook his head, "Could it be that immortals truly exist in this realm? If immortals do exist, then they are not born divine, but rather attained through diligent cultivation." Visions of the statues of deities enshrined within the temples of Dongli City suddenly illuminated his thoughts. Until now, He had regarded these divine figures as mere constructs of storytellers or the fanciful creations of ancestors. The objects of their veneration had always been the longings of their hearts, rather than any singular entity. However, this belief now appeared to be upended. Could it be that, beyond the ordinary martial practitioners on the ground, there existed a clandestine and formidable assembly? Might this assembly reside high above, perhaps concealed among the clouds, or inhabit remote mountains? Surveying all that unfolds in the world, could this assembly be the very cultivators of the Tao that his master had spoken of? And now, did he have the fortuitous chance to join their esteemed ranks, to partake in the cultivation of the Tao, and to become one whom all revered and extolled? In an instant, Xiao Huahua experienced a wave of dizziness wash over him. It was as if the veil of illusion that had shrouded him for 16 years had been rent asunder. An authentic world, previously concealed, unfolded before his eyes. Once more, Xiao Huahua lifted his gaze to his master. The young man stood before him, merely 10 meters away, hands clasped behind his back, yet he suddenly appeared unfamiliar. A faint, ethereal veil seemed to envelop the young man, rendering him enigmatic and distant, as though he were not of this realm. The master, whom he had known for less than half a day, emanated an aura reminiscent of a celestial deity, as if he had been venerated for many years. Could it be that the master was indeed a divine being? This notion arose from the profound recesses of his heart, surging forth like an inexorable tide. Xiao Hua regarded Chu Feng with trepidation, delicately inquiring, "Pray tell, what realm does master occupy? Have you, too, attained the exalted state of immortality?" Upon hearing these words, Chu Feng emitted a soft chuckle, directing his gaze towards the heavens, leaving Xiao Hua with naught but a fleeting silhouette. In a contemplative tone, he remarked, "Hua, along the path of cultivation, one must remain steadfast and not yearn for unattainable heights. My realm in this world is a memory long forgotten. Even if I were to disclose it to you, it would serve no purpose and could disrupt the serenity of your aspiring heart. As for whether I have achieved immortality." Suddenly, Chu Feng turned, a mysterious smile gracing his lips, yet he fell into silence. Although he ultimately said nothing, to Xiao Hua, it felt as though he had unveiled everything. This scene struck him like a thunderbolt, causing him to stagger back several paces. The youth trembled with exhilaration. Indeed, only the most extraordinary masters, as depicted in legends, would speak in half-truths, leaving the remainder for the listener to discern. Xiao Hua murmured to himself, "He must be an immortal. Otherwise, how could he possess such profound knowledge and mastery over the arts of cultivation?" His conjecture crystallized at that moment. Surely, there existed immortals in this world, and his master was undoubtedly one among them. Furthermore, it was entirely plausible that his master was a deity he had previously heard of, perhaps even the very one to whom he had once knelt in reverence. Little did he anticipate that by mustering his courage to venture into this forest, he would encounter such a transcendent being, a figure of legend. It appeared that the tribulations of his preceding 16 years had merely paved the way for this extraordinary moment. Xiao Hua nodded, his resolve steadfast as he gazed at Chu Feng and proclaimed, "Master, I yearn to learn the path of cultivation, to master the art of qi refinement." As he spoke, his front teeth trembled with eager anticipation. His eyes, overflowing with deep respect and fervent passion, were intently fixed upon Chu Feng. According to his master, the path of qi refinement ultimately leads to the realm of immortals, even if one does not reach the culmination of this journey. Merely embarking upon it would bestow an additional lifespan of 2 cycles. Although he remained uncertain of the formidable powers it would confer, living 2 cycles longer than the average individual undoubtedly suggested considerable strength, rivaling that of the postnatal realm. If he could acquire this knowledge, even with a mere 6 months remaining, he could surely surpass the young master of the Miao Miao sect. Nevertheless, the youth before him remained in silent contemplation, offering no reply. Suddenly, Xiao Hua was jolted back to reality, recalling the narratives he had perused. It was said that revered masters placed immense significance on decorum. Some would be inclined to share their wisdom, yet would refrain from revealing everything explicitly instead leaving enigmas or vague allusions for their disciples to decipher. In ancient tales, there existed a celestial monkey who sought enlightenment from an immortal sage and was publicly struck upon the brow thrice. The monkey, upon receiving this revelation, rose at the third watch to pursue the immortal sage, ultimately mastering the transcendent art of immortality. Even if my master's cultivation method does not reach the exalted heights of legend, it surely must not fall short by much. The requisite decorum, undoubtedly, must not be too abrupt. With this contemplation in heart, Xiao Hua reverently approached Chu Feng, kneeling before him, performing 3 profound bows and 9 humble kowtows, proclaiming with fervor, "I implore my master to bestow upon me the secrets of Qi refinement, that I may seek redemption in the duel that awaits 6 months hence." Taken aback by Xiao Huahua's unexpected show of reverence, Chu Feng reflected inwardly. I refrained from responding earlier as I was preoccupied with devising the Qi refinement technique. What could this young one possibly be contemplating? A subtle smile graced his lips. Very well. Xiao Hua has demonstrated his utmost devotion and trust. Whatever guidance I offer, he is likely to embrace wholeheartedly. Thus, even in the event of failure, he would never lay the blame at my feet. After a brief pause, Chu Feng cleared his throat gently and declared, "Since you earnestly pursue the path of immortality, I shall bestow upon you the method of Qi refinement." Overcome with joy, Xiao Hua trembled as tears brimmed in his eyes, fully prostrating himself before Chu Feng. "Thank you, Master." Chapter 7. The Art of Breath Technique Fabrication. Within the thatched cottage, Xiao Hua anxiously surveyed his surroundings. The modest dwelling housed merely an antiquated wooden bed, a table, a handful of books, and a solitary pair of chopsticks. Nothing beyond that. It was unadorned, monotonous, and radiated an essence of profound solitude. Such was the dwelling of a sage, as depicted in ancient tales. Xiao Hua, as Chu Feng's voice resonated, the startled youth swiftly knelt, quaking as he responded, "Disciple is present." Chu Feng reclined upon the bed, his gaze fixed upon Xiao Hua with a sense of contentment. He spoke in a serene tone. "Very well, I shall now convey to you the method of Qi refinement. You must adhere to my instructions meticulously, without any deviation. Rise." The youth ascended from his kneeling position. Chu Feng continued, "Now, replicate my posture and sit cross-legged." Xiao Hua settled onto the ground, his eyes intently focused on Chu Feng as he adjusted his sitting position. Before he could fully center himself, he heard Chu Feng's voice, perceived the spiritual energy of the universe. Sensing this spiritual energy constitutes the initial step in Qi refinement. Only by acknowledging the existence of this energy may one be regarded as possessing the potential for Qi refinement. Upon hearing this, Xiao Hua assumed a cross-legged position, striving to steady his racing heart and compel himself to breathe deeply in an effort to quell his nerves. The weight of Chu Feng's words pressed heavily upon him. To perceive the spiritual energy of the universe was paramount to possessing the talent for Qi refinement. What if he failed to sense it? Would all his past endeavors fade into oblivion? Such musings troubled his mind, igniting a spark of anxiety within him. Xiao Hua suddenly shook his head, fervently urging himself, "It is all right, Xiao Hua, you must have faith in yourself. Though I may lack the innate talent for martial cultivation, what if I possess the gift for Qi refinement? Furthermore, with such a divine master by my side, even if I am not inherently gifted in this regard, he would not overlook me. Surely, he will devise a means to assist me." As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Xiao Hua's heart found a profound serenity. Meanwhile, the gentle teachings of Chu Feng continued to echo in his ears. "I shall first impart to you the art of breathing and nurturing. Only through mastering this technique can you begin to perceive the ethereal energies of the universe." Xiao Hua grew increasingly focused. "It is right here." He embarked upon the journey of Qi refinement, stepping into the initial stage of transforming his fate. Indeed, it is here. Yet, after a prolonged silence, Chu Feng had yet to utter another word. Pausing for a moment, he contemplated the progression of his Qi cultivation, though he had not fully considered the methods requisite for entering this realm. After a period of reflection, A spark of enlightenment illuminated his eyes as he recalled the breathing techniques from a certain celestial domain. With an air of enigma, Chu Feng gradually articulated, "The art of breathing is profoundly intricate. I shall now impart to you a simple introductory method. First, envision yourself as a millennium-old tortoise. Contemplate how this ancient creature breathes." A tortoise? Xiao Huahua was suddenly reminded of an occasion from the previous year when a faction had gathered to commemorate his father's birthday, presenting a venerable tortoise as a gift. Although his father held no particular affection for the creature, Xiao Huahua found it delightful and often kept it company. In an instant, it felt as though the ancient tortoise had materialized beside him. Xiao Huahua observed the tortoise intently, noting the subtle rise and fall of its abdomen, and unconsciously, his own breathing began to slow. With each breath, his body grew increasingly serene. Each inhalation lingered within him, revitalizing his spirit. It appeared as though his body had succumbed to a deeper relaxation. Xiao Huahua paused, sensing the extraordinary changes within him, and his heart overflowed with joy. Is this the previously uncharted path of cultivation? Is this the fabled ethereal energy of the universe? I stand prepared. Let it come. With his eyes firmly closed, Chu Feng gazed at the Xiao Huahua, scratching his head in contemplation. This young one appears to be remarkably attuned. Could it be that he has truly comprehended something profound? He proceeded to elucidate. The so-called ethereal energy represents the primordial essence of the universe, concealed within the celestial bodies and dispersed throughout the mountains and rivers. To perceive this energy, given your current level of cultivation, you must depend solely on the most fundamental breathing technique to attune yourself to the frequencies of the cosmos. When your breath connects with this subtle essence, you shall be capable of harboring the ethereal energy within your being. At this moment, Chu Feng swiftly added, "Perceiving the ethereal energy of the universe is an exceedingly straightforward endeavor. Since you have become my disciple, this should be well within your capabilities, should it not?" Upon hearing this, Xiao Huahua, seated in tranquil contemplation, felt a gentle warmth in his nose as his eyes began to shimmer with unshed tears. Despite having lived a life steeped in exceptional privilege and surrounded by adoration, he had never before encountered such steadfast belief in his potential, particularly regarding his cultivation aptitude. Even during the establishment of the 3-year pact, it had merely served as a facade for the city lord's mansion and the inhabitants of Dongli City to reclaim their pride. Everyone was convinced that in 6 months, he would inevitably be overpowered by that woman, destined to endure a life of humiliation. Even his father, who had stood by his side for 16 years and had consistently offered support, hoped he might temporarily withdraw from Dongli City as the competition date drew near. The concern was that he might succumb to feelings of inferiority following a devastating defeat, unable to lift his head in pride ever again. While this anxiety was rooted in genuine care, to Xiao Huahua, it also felt like a betrayal of trust. In stark contrast, the master he had known for less than half a day bestowed upon him unwavering faith, imparting supreme techniques. This marked the first occasion in his life when he had experienced such profound trust. Xiao Huahua silently vowed, whether it be to vanquish that woman in 6 months and demonstrate my worth, or to honor the trust of my master, I shall prevail. Suddenly, Xiao Huahua's eyes widened as he gazed at Chu Feng. Noticing the fervor in his expression, Chu Feng eagerly inquired, "Disciple, have you begun to cultivate your spirit?" "Master, I shall undoubtedly cultivate my spiritual energy. I vow to dedicate myself entirely to my training." As he spoke, Xiao Huahua turned to the astonished Chu Feng and asked, "Master, what troubles you?" With a resolute expression, Chu Feng proceeded, "As you cultivate your spiritual energy, I will perceive it. I have confidence that you will indeed succeed in your endeavors." Xiao Huahua, filled with enthusiasm, nodded vigorously. "Rest assured, Master, I shall not be remiss in my efforts." With a subtle nod, Chu Feng gazed at the earnest Xiao Huahua and spoke with a gentle smile. "Simply focus on your training here." With that, Chu Feng gradually rose and exited the room. After quietly traversing a distance of 7 zhang from the wooden cabin, he finally exhaled in relief. Casting a glance back at the thatched cottage, Chu Feng shook his head and remarked, I hope this young lad can truly comprehend the essence. He then mused aloud. This boy is so innocent and easily misled. Should he falter in his cultivation, I can always devise some stratagem. He chuckled to himself. At worst, I shall contrive a solution once we depart. Chapter 8. Xiao Huahua's Self-Delusion, the Essence of a Great Master. Before the thatched cottage, Chu Feng glanced back, pursing his lips. Observe that young man, so diligently honing his craft. I ponder whether he is achieving any advancement. Chu Feng raised his gaze to the heavens, immersed in contemplation. It appeared that in the films he had viewed in his previous existence, this was indeed the manner in which individuals pursued cultivation, was it not? Adhering to the tropes prevalent in cinema, one would engage in rigorous practice following the techniques depicted in comics, and inevitably, some result would materialize. If this realm indeed functioned according to such principles, then, as articulated in the tomes of his former existence, perceiving the essence of spiritual energy ought to be astonishingly effortless. Regardless of one's innate capabilities, a mere 10 days would suffice. With this notion, Chu Feng experienced a swell of assurance. The method he had conveyed was the zenith of the most exquisite elements drawn from innumerable cultivation narratives of his past life. After meticulously evaluating millions of alternatives, he had chosen the most fitting strategy for Xiao Huahua's training. Furthermore, the terminology and procedures involved would undoubtedly leave Xiao Hua, a neophyte captivated by martial arts lore, in a state of perplexity. Even he, who had thrived in contemporary society, would find it bewildering. Yet, as he contemplated, a frown marred his countenance. Surely, one ought to be capable of sensing the presence of spiritual energy? If 10 days were to elapse, and this young man remained oblivious. He cast his gaze across the vast expanse of sky and earth, ultimately settling upon the thatched cottage, his heart laden with trepidation. This would suggest that perhaps this realm is indeed devoid of spiritual essence. Should that be the case, I would be left with no alternative but to gather my belongings and flee. At the very least, this place would cease to be viable. For now, Xiao Huahua still regarded him as master. Yet when the moment arrived that Xiao Huahua awakened to the truth and realized he had been misled, all his dreams would shatter like delicate bubbles, rendering the anticipated triumph of their 3-year pact utterly futile. The energy amassed within was of no trivial consequence. Presently, Xiao Huahua still addressed him as master, but when he ultimately lost everything, he might very well summon the full force of Dongli City in a desperate confrontation. With this contemplation, Chu Feng's expression turned slightly frantic. Let us hope he can indeed comprehend something. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had elapsed. Chu Feng cast a glance at the wooden cabin, where little activity was apparent, sighed softly, and reclined upon a branch as thick as a thigh, gently closing his eyes. Before long, a crackling sound began to resonate in his ears. Chu Feng opened his eyes to investigate. Below, Xiao Huahua clumsily tended to the fire before him. With a crackle, the wood succumbed to the sparks of flint. Once the flames roared to life, he placed a ceramic pot atop, and in no time, the water within began to boil. Xiao Huahua gazed at the bubbling surface, hesitating for a moment, but ultimately, with a heavy heart, he cast in the blood ginseng along with several other spiritual herbs. Before long, a ring of crimson bubbles emerged within the pot. A fragrant aroma wafted from the cauldron, permeating the forest. Shortly thereafter, a voice drifted down from the branches above. Is the meal ready? Upon hearing this, Xiao Hua nodded enthusiastically. Master, it shall be ready shortly. As he spoke, he tended to the flames, his gaze fixed intently on the pot. Chu Feng responded with a gentle nod, expressing, I have grown somewhat fatigued by meat in recent days. Let us indulge in something more delicate. As he uttered these words, the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Just a few nights prior, this young lad had enjoyed a deep slumber, enabling him to rise in the dead of night to raid a rabbit's nest, later placing the spoils at the cottage's doorstep, claiming to have summoned them through magic. Yet, for reasons unknown, the previous night had found him restless, unable to find a moment's peace, thus forsaking that plan. He felt the need to uphold the persona of a reclusive sage. Should Xiao Huahua witness him darting through the woods in pursuit of a mere couple of rabbits, Looking utterly disheveled, he would undoubtedly be filled with skepticism. After all, could a celestial being truly be so easily outwitted by rabbits? As he tended to the flames, Xiao Huahua was seized by a fit of coughing, his eyes welling with tears as he beheld the sustenance simmering in the pot. Master, your generosity knows no bounds. Although he recognized that these blood ginsengs were of little significance to his master, he couldn't help but reflect on the rarity of mentors who were willing to share their blessings with their disciples in this world. Contemplating this, Xiao Huahua gazed up at Chu Feng with profound reverence. In the southern wilderness, even innate martial artists could scarcely regard a century-old blood ginseng with such indifference as his master displayed. Listening to Xiao Huahua's words from below, Chu Feng felt a twinge of sorrow within, but maintained an air of nonchalance as he chuckled lightly. To me, blood ginseng or wild herbs are merely edible foliage within the vastness of nature. If it exists solely to satisfy hunger, why concern oneself with whether it is blood ginseng or medicinal herbs? One should simply partake. Xiao Huahua nodded earnestly indeed. Master S stature is not something ordinary individuals can compare to. I shall dedicate myself to diligent study, so as not to bring shame upon you. Suddenly, his eyes sparkled with excitement. Master, the meal is ready. Upon hearing his words, Chu Feng descended from the tree with grace and leisurely approached Xiao Huahua. Xiao Huahua surveyed the scene, noting that his master's actions, whether it be descending from the tree, ladling soup, or dining, were strikingly unpretentious, devoid of any semblance of superiority. In truth, his master seemed even more languid than he himself. Were he an ordinary commoner, such behavior might be excused as a lack of decorum. Yet, what manner of individual was his master? A reclusive sage residing in the depths of the mountains. The actions and demeanor of such an extraordinary being could scarcely be grasped by someone of his modest martial capabilities. Was this not a true embodiment of the fabled return to simplicity? In this context, it appeared increasingly probable that his master was indeed an entity reminiscent of a celestial being. The more he pondered, the more steadfast Xiao Huahua became in his beliefs. After all, legends have frequently narrated that supreme masters prefer to obscure their identities among the populace, never disclosing their true natures. Charlatans boast of their superiority, inviting trouble upon themselves, while authentic masters grow weary of the bloodshed inherent in the martial realm, retreating to the mountains or mingling with the ordinary, shunning worldly concerns. Suddenly, Xiao Huahua straightened, startling Chu Feng. Before he could express his curiosity, he beheld Xiao Huahua bowing with utmost gravity. Master, to be under your guidance is the fortune I have amassed over 10 lifetimes. I shall practice with diligence and swiftly embark upon the path of refining qi. Then, in 6 months, I shall vanquish that woman and bring no shame upon you. Chu Feng noted his earnest demeanor, his lips twitching ever so slightly. Well done. This young man had, in some manner, succeeded in fortifying his own resolve. It appeared that, for the moment, there was no cause for concern regarding any uncertainties from him. Chu Feng nodded, acknowledging, although your innate talent may be somewhat deficient, your readiness to confront your own limitations and your unwavering diligence in training are truly praiseworthy. Such an attitude eclipses that of countless others. I have not misjudged you. As he spoke, Chu Feng ladled a bowl of soup infused with blood ginseng and meat for Xiao Huahua. Upon receiving the bowl, Xiao Huahua was overcome with gratitude, exclaiming, "Thank you, master." Chu Feng chuckled softly, reflecting on the fact that although he had merely served a bowl of his carefully prepared soup, the boy felt the need to express such profound gratitude. Truly, he is a naive lad. Chapter 9. Just as I was poised to escape, you assert that you have attained mastery? A gratifying meal had come to an end. Xiao Huahua awkwardly gathered the dishes strewn across the ground. Upon completing this task, he directed his gaze towards Chu Feng for a fleeting moment, his expression fluctuating as though he harbored a question. Yet after a brief pause, he ultimately chose to remain silent. Closing the door to the outhouse, Xiao Huahua struck his face with fervor, conveying his frustration. My master cannot possibly remain unaware of my struggle to cultivate spiritual energy. The reason for his reluctance to assist me must lie in his steadfast faith in my potential, believing that I can unravel the subtle complexities on my own. How could I ever dare to question my master? After murmuring to himself, a trace of despondency lingered upon the youthful visage of Xiaohua. It has been 3 days, and still, there is not a whisper of progress. Am I truly unworthy of martial arts? Or perhaps incapable of harnessing spiritual energy? Suddenly, a spark of determination ignited in his eyes. No, my master would not have bestowed upon me such profound teachings if I did not possess some inherent talent for this. Calming the tempest within, Xiaohua settled himself upon the aged, creaking wooden bed, closing his eyes to embrace the cultivation technique bestowed by Chu Feng. Immersing himself in the art of breath control, outside the humble thatched dwelling, Chu Feng remained motionless for an extended duration, his brow knitted in contemplation. He mused. He gazed at me for a considerable time. Could it be that he has begun to question my abilities? That distressing thought barely emerged as Chu Feng resolutely shook his head in refutation. No, it must be that he is incapable of cultivating spiritual energy and seeks guidance. Yet hesitates. It must be so. Having arrived at this conclusion, Chu Feng's brow remained furrowed, for either scenario was far from advantageous. Xiaohua still could not comprehend any semblance of spiritual power. In recent days, in pursuit of tranquility, he had endeavored to practice independently, only to achieve no results. This likely signified that the method was inherently flawed. He paced restlessly, each step accompanied by a sigh. The blazing sun, once high in the heavens, had gradually descended below the valley's horizon. As evening approached, the world dimmed, and the air turned crisp, a chill enveloping the forest. Yet, within the confines of the house, the boy, seated with closed eyes, was drenched in perspiration. Xiaohua continued to furrow his brow, adhering to the breathing technique. Inhaling through his nostrils, the energy coursed through his form before being expelled outward, relaxing every sinew. Throughout this process of breath control, he consistently recited the techniques imparted by his master. Each cycle seemed to awaken something within him, yet it always eluded grasp. Unbeknownst to him, Xiaohua's body began to emanate warmth. He paused momentarily. The medicinal properties of the blood ginseng are commencing to manifest. It felt akin to lying amidst a furnace. With each breath, he sensed his skin growing warm, his muscles aching, and even his blood surging with heat. Sweat, along with impurities, poured forth from his body in torrents, soon saturating the entire bed. In this state, Xiaohua experienced an unprecedented clarity of both mind and body. His perceptions had sharpened considerably. Suddenly, within the confines of his tightly shut eyes, a crimson glow illuminated the pitch-black world surrounding him. Xiaohua trembled throughout, his breath becoming somewhat erratic. Was this the spiritual energy spoken of by his master? Filled with anticipation, he was poised to open his eyes and extend his hand, yet he quickly composed himself, silently contemplating. Indeed, my master once imparted that merely sensing the spiritual energy is inadequate. True mastery resides in assimilating it within one's being. I have not yet even approached the threshold. With this reflection, Xiaohua attained a profound sense of tranquility. The breathing technique persisted, in perfect synchrony with the ebb and flow of his inner energy. The luminous streak within the shadowy realm was gradually drawn into his essence. Outside the humble cottage, Chu Feng could no longer remain composed, pacing restlessly and murmuring to himself, "No, I cannot endure a 10-day wait. Such a duration is far too protracted. I must devise an excuse to persuade Xiaohua to enlist a few warriors to escort me before he loses faith in me. First, I must escape, then seek an opportunity for liberation. Otherwise, should too much time elapse, and Xiaohua become utterly disillusioned, and if he inquires about the cultivation process, and I am unable to furnish a satisfactory response, the consequences could be dire." With a resolute slap to his thigh, Chu Feng's countenance solidified with unwavering determination. Indeed, that was the plan. Yet, just as this thought took root, he found himself disinterested in further strategizing. A cerulean light screen materialized before him, accompanied by a chilling electronic voice. Ding. Congratulations to the host disciple for successfully absorbing spiritual energy into the body. Ding. Tenfold return successful. Host, Chu Feng, age, 20, cultivation, perfected absorption of spiritual energy. Gazing at the text that unfolded before him, Chu Feng momentarily froze, cradling his head in disbelief. It worked, it truly worked. I have genuinely mastered the absorption of spiritual energy. Even upon witnessing the notification on the screen, Chu Feng still found it somewhat astonishing. After all, he had concocted the technique himself. Could his disciple truly be so extraordinarily gifted? To contemplate that within merely 3 days, a devised method could be fully mastered, his gaze returned to the thatched cottage. As anticipated, a gentle luminescence flickered within the shadows of the hut. Chu Feng's fists tightened in exhilaration, the astonishment in his eyes morphing into unbridled elation. There undeniably existed spiritual energy, signifying that the path of cultivation was wholly attainable. Furthermore, if he could successfully introduce this proven technique to the world with the system's backing and harness the fortunes of others, would he not be poised to attain immortality and reign supreme in this realm? Suddenly, without any forewarning, a surge of pure energy erupted from within him, radiating throughout his entire being. A wave of spiritual force surged forth, causing his robes to billow as though caught in a tempest, creating a soft, rustling sound. With this influx of energy, he perceived his mind as having been liberated from its constraints, and his thoughts crystallized with remarkable clarity. Chu Feng instantly calmed himself, closing his eyes to channel his energy with unwavering focus. The ethereal energy flowed through his limbs and bones, as if guided by an unseen hand, penetrating the very marrow of his muscles without the necessity of consciously invoking his rudimentary techniques. A gentle warmth enveloped him, infiltrating every cell, imparting upon his body an unparalleled sense of comfort. His skeletal and muscular structures creaked and crackled, and with each wave of exquisite sensations, he experienced an extraordinary fullness within his essence. His entire physique overflowed with vitality. In the fleeting duration equivalent to half a cup of tea, Chu Feng experienced a remarkable metamorphosis. Behind his firmly closed eyelids, which ought to have registered naught, a novel realm appeared to unfurl before him, disclosing paths of scarlet brilliance. He quickly grasped that this was the embodiment of the celestial energy. Ultimately, following an infusion that lasted as long as half a stick of incense, the energy began to attain stability. Chu Feng opened his eyes, a gentle smile gracing his lips as he beheld his hands. Flickers of crimson light danced upon his palms. In that moment, invigorated by the flow of spiritual energy, his body felt as though all 10 of his acupoints were filled with essence, creating an unbroken connection. With but one more step, he was poised to ascend to the Qi refinement stage. Chapter 10. A Day of Cultivation. An ancient genius of immortal practice? In the dimly lit forest, the atmosphere exuded a chilling desolation. Yet, beneath the trees, the young man was enveloped in warmth, reminiscent of a furnace radiating slow, searing heat. Chu Feng's body quivered with exhilaration. He was liberated from the anxiety of finding his way out of the forest or the dread of being uncovered by Xiao Huahua regarding his fabricated persona. The haunting fear of being surrounded by wolves or leopards had receded into the annals of memory. With the surge of ethereal energy, all prior apprehensions had evaporated into oblivion. What lay before him was the profound contemplation of the path of cultivation. Until today, such aspirations had transcended the boundaries of his imagination. Undoubtedly, all of this was attributed to his astute disciple, Xiao Huahua. After relishing the experience, Chu Feng took a moment to steady his emotions, coughed lightly, and resumed his usual composed demeanor before striding purposefully toward the thatched cottage. After all, despite his elation, preserving the facade of a sage was of utmost importance. Inside the room, Xiao Huahua, having quelled the energy within, exhaled a breath of turbid air before opening his eyes. With a creak, the decaying wooden door swung open. Xiao Huahua turned towards the entrance, observing Chu Feng enter with his characteristic tranquility. Upon seeing his master, Xiao Huahua could not help but marvel inwardly. Master is indeed a transcendent being, an immortal among mortals. I have scarcely begun to grasp my abilities, yet Master perceives my progress instantaneously. He astutely calculated the moment my energy would stabilize to avoid disturbing my initial experience of absorbing the spirit into my being. After I regained my composure, he promptly came to check on me. How fortunate I am to have encountered such an extraordinary master. Oblivious to the intricate musings that occupied Xiao Huahua's mind, Chu Feng regarded him for a brief moment before gently affirming, "Indeed, reaching the threshold of cultivation within a mere 3 days and successfully assimilating the spirit into the body may not be extraordinarily exceptional, yet it is undeniably praiseworthy. You possess the potential of a cultivator." Upon hearing Chu Feng's words, Xiao Huahua felt a pang of determination in his heart and resolutely replied, "Master, rest assured, I am acutely aware of my modest talent. I shall devote myself wholeheartedly to diligent cultivation and will strive to meet your expectations." Xiao Huahua's eyes gleamed with determination, mirroring his steadfast resolve, in stark contrast to the years of relentless martial training that yielded minimal progress. The remarkable accomplishments he achieved in such a short span of cultivating immortality imbued him with a profound sense of satisfaction, as long as he could reap some rewards. The arduous practice transformed from a burden into a source of joy. Certainly, his ability to absorb qi into his body within a mere 3 days, coupled with his master's commendation as a promising candidate for immortality, indicated that he might not be too lacking, did it not? Xiao Huahua hesitated before posing the question. "Might I inquire what qualities Master deems to be the exceptional talents of true immortals? I yearn to comprehend the magnitude of the disparity between myself and those genuine prodigies." Upon hearing this, Chu Feng contemplated briefly before replying. The quintessential act of assimilating spiritual energy into one's being for genuine prodigies requires no more time than it takes to ignite a stick of incense. As Xiao Huahua looked at him in bewilderment, Chu Feng elaborated. Those who can authentically be deemed immortal geniuses possess an inherent connection to spiritual energy, rendering their cultivation exceedingly effortless. Chu Feng nearly suppressed a laugh at this notion, for these assertions were entirely concocted by him. What defines a genius? If Xiao Huahua, armed with a hastily composed manual, could inadvertently discover the pathway to immortality, the world would indeed lack true prodigies. Nevertheless, to instill a sense of caution in Xiao Hua and to affirm his own identity as a reclusive master, Chu Feng found himself compelled to fabricate this narrative of genius. It is only when one perceives their own inadequacies, even feeling unworthy of their present possessions, that they will ardently pursue their ambitions without the slightest trace of doubt. As anticipated, a shadow of melancholy crossed Xiao Huahua's countenance upon hearing this revelation. The exhilaration from his 3-day breakthrough was thoroughly eclipsed. Although he had long foreseen this, it was impossible for him to remain unperturbed. With downcast eyes, he silently mourned, "I did not anticipate the chasm between myself and true geniuses to be so profound. I am still woefully insufficient. 1 stick of incense, and yet I consumed 3 days. With such qualifications, my master must undoubtedly be troubled." Had I not inquired, Master would have remained silent. I must cultivate diligently to honor the tireless efforts of my esteemed master. Oblivious to the weight of his words, Chu Feng proceeded. For the average individual, absorbing spiritual energy into their bodies more than 5 times will yield 5 strands of spiritual energy, thereby enabling them to ascend to the qi refinement stage. 5 strands of spiritual energy signify the conventional limit that a cultivator's body can withstand prior to this phase. Typically, you say, Xiao Huahua swiftly capitalized on this delicate information. Does this suggest the existence of even superior alternatives? Observing him, Chu Feng nodded in acknowledgement. Indeed, 5 strands of spiritual energy represent the threshold for the average cultivator, yet does not signify the limits for those endowed with exceptional talent. For cultivators, the assimilation of spiritual energy into the corporeal form is paramount, serving as the essential foundation upon which monumental achievements are constructed. The more robust this foundation, the more substantial the advantages for the cultivator's future ascension. It is precisely for this reason that the majority of prodigies opt to await the manifestation of the seventh strand of spiritual energy within themselves before embarking on a breakthrough. Conversely, those ancient behemoths possess the extraordinary ability to condense their spiritual energy to such a degree that their bodies can harbor 9 strands, only transcending their limitations upon reaching this pivotal threshold. Astonishingly, the duration required for them to amass 9 strands of spiritual energy rarely exceeds a single day. This is encapsulated in the phrase refining energy in a day. Upon hearing this, Xiao Huahua stood frozen in place, his pupils trembling. Ordinary individuals may only cultivate up to 5 strands. Yet prodigies can transcend this limit by 2, while ancient aberrations can directly breach the threshold with 9 strands. Furthermore, to achieve the state of energy refinement in a mere day, what astonishing talent is this? Xiao Huahua gazed at Chu Feng, resolutely rising to his feet and gritting his teeth. Master, as your disciple, I, Xiao Huahua, am unwavering in my determination to push myself to the utmost and refuse to settle for an ordinary breakthrough with 5 strands of spiritual energy. I shall endeavor to accumulate at least 7 strands, thereby meeting the standard of a prodigy before I attempt a breakthrough, so as not to bring dishonor upon you, Master. As he spoke, he clenched his fists. To uphold your honor and to secure a brighter future for myself, I shall persevere. Chu Feng chuckled with satisfaction, remarking that Xiao Huahua's desire for growth was more than sufficient. Listening to his mentor's words, Xiao Huahua felt his resolve solidify. He firmly resolved to accumulate at least 8 strands of spiritual energy before attempting to break through. However, he decided against sharing this ambition with his master, as it might appear rather foolish given his current talents and potentially displease him. Chapter 11. A life devoted to my master, not inferior to others. Chu Feng stood at the foot of the bed, observing the conflicted expressions of grit and contemplation on Xiao Huahua's face. He realized that his efforts to inspire the boy had borne fruit. The lad was clearly lost in his own thoughts. After a brief moment, Xiao Huahua, having regained his composure, hesitated before boldly inquiring, Master, may I ask how many strands of spiritual energy you integrated into your body during your own cultivation? As he spoke, a glimmer of anticipation sparkled in the youth's eyes. Given the master's profound prowess, it surely must not be less than that of those esteemed individuals. Chapter 12. A disciple of extraordinary insight. 4th level of energy refinement. Within the humble, thatched cottage, Xiao Huahua sensed the spiritual energy flowing within him. 9 strands of spiritual energy coursed through his being, nourishing his vital essence. This sensation of fulfillment filled him with immense joy. The 9th strand of spiritual energy has finally entered my body. Clenching his fists in exhilaration, he thought, although I have yet to attain the master's realm of 10 strands, under his guidance, I have successfully broken through to the 9th strand of spiritual energy. I am now on par with the average prodigy. Chapter 13. Xiao Huahua. Having lived for so long, the master must feel a profound loneliness. I shall seek out suitable companions for him. As these words escaped his lips, Xiao Huahua lingered with uncertainty. After all, the master had long turned away from the tumult of the outside world, opting for a life of seclusion over many years. One might ponder whether he would be willing to accompany him. With a resigned sigh, Chu Feng rose from his seat, taking in his surroundings before he remarked, Very well. It has indeed been a considerable time since I last beheld the scenery beyond these walls. Perhaps I shall join you for a change of pace. Had this been in the past, Chu Feng would have undoubtedly declined to depart, for all that he possessed was intricately woven into the fabric of his solitude. Chapter 14. Xiao Zhan. My naive son, has he been misled by his peers masquerading as wise sages? The Xiao Manor, situated in the very heart of Dongli City, stands as the most magnificent estate within the realm. Before its formidable gates, 2 guards clad in crimson stood sentinel. On the broad avenue ahead, a middle-aged man could be observed. He appeared to be in his late 40s, possessing a square visage that emanated an intimidating aura, causing others to hesitate in his presence. His robust physique was adorned with bulging muscles that undulated beneath his dark attire with each breath. With hands clasped behind him, he ambled along the path, casting glances to either side and occasionally releasing a sigh. Chapter 15. I have long since forgotten what base existence is inherent. Within the illustrious hall of the Xiao family, silence enveloped the space. Xiao Zhan remained fixated on Chu Feng, his demeanor increasingly reflecting displeasure. In former times, Xiao Huahua frequently sought the guidance of charlatans as mentors. Nevertheless, those frauds possessed at least a modicum of credibility. They were adept enough to dupe Xiao Huahua for a few coins, all the while refraining from encroaching upon the Xiao residents. Consequently, he usually chose to overlook such occurrences, provided that no harm befell Huahua. Yet today, this man's visage appeared remarkably youthful. Chapter 16. Should you seek immortality, I shall resemble a mere mayfly gazing upon the infinite sky. Within the grand hall, Xiao Zhan and his companions remained transfixed on Chu Feng. With a chilling smile, Xiao Zhan shook his head, proclaiming, "Sir, you possess a certain allure in your deceit. Even I was nearly beguiled by your eloquence. It is no surprise that Huahua succumbed to your ruse." At that moment, the elder, Xiao Shan, rose with the aid of his cane, his gaze equally frigid as he proclaimed, "Young man, in the chronicles of the Lihua kingdom, even the most extraordinary prodigies have descended into mediocrity in a single day. Such records have endured for a century within the Lihua kingdom." Chapter 17. The quaking of the Xiao elders. Could this truly be the result of Chu Feng's cultivation after just one day's practice? Xiao Manor. Countless disciples of the Xiao family simultaneously lifted their gazes towards the heavens. The sky was shrouded in foreboding shadows, and the suffocating aura that enveloped the estate left them gasping. All disciples remained transfixed, as if enchanted, rooted to the spot, hardly daring to breathe as they beheld the spectacle before them. A multitude of flying swords loomed ominously overhead, cascading like a torrential deluge, all hurtling towards the grand hall. Despair, trepidation, and astonishment were vividly etched upon the countenances of the many Xiao disciples. Chapter 18. The threshold of cultivation, the pinnacle of martial arts. Within the grand hall of the Xiao family, Xiao Zhan remained in a stupor, deeply contemplating every word that Chu Feng had previously articulated. "If you do not cultivate, you will perceive me as a frog in a well, gazing at the moon above. If you do cultivate, you will envision me as a mayfly basking in the vast expanse of the sky." He suddenly lifted his head, shaking it in bewilderment, and sighed. To achieve mastery in a single day, such innate talent is truly awe-inspiring. Sighs of astonishment echoed from the lips of the three elders as well. Little did they anticipate that the destination they had ardently pursued throughout their lives was merely the inception for another. Chapter 19. Martial Arts? Do you dare to challenge my path to immortality? In the expansive hall of the Xiao family, Xiao Zhan and his three companions encircled Xiao Huahua, their gazes fixed upon him with unwavering intensity. Under ordinary circumstances, they would have dismissed his utterances as mere folly gleaned from novels, failing to take them seriously. However, at this moment, Xiao Huahua had returned accompanied by a master whose influence could not be overlooked throughout the entire Lihua kingdom, eclipsing even the grandmasters. Consequently, what Xiao Huahua articulated could no longer be disregarded. His prior words resonated within their souls, striking a sensitive chord. The eldest elder shared this sentiment. Chapter 20. Xiao Huahua. Third elder, rest assured, I shall not bring you harm. Xiao Zhan and the eldest elder were enveloped in profound bewilderment. The latter, somewhat entranced, remarked, "Is the path truly so enigmatic?" Though he posed the inquiry, it was evident to all that a trace of skepticism lingered in the depths of the eldest elder's gaze. Clearly, Xiao Zhan and the other elders did not regard his words with the gravity they deserved. After all, the so-called path to immortality was too astonishing for them, and they had never encountered such concepts before. Furthermore, the idea of elevating oneself from a mere third-rate warrior to a level capable of confronting first-rate warriors in just 3 months was inconceivable. Chapter 21. With mediocre talent. Can one defeat a first-rate warrior after 3 months of cultivation? Before the grand hall of the Shao family, a formidable punch surged forth. The third elder was taken aback, hastily raising both hands to shield himself. Bang! A muted sound reverberated as the third elder stumbled back 5 paces. Before he could regain his composure, another ferocious gust of wind surged toward him. He suddenly glanced upward, only to discover that Xiao Hua had inexplicably closed the gap. A scarlet fist, lacking any finesse, lunged at him. This sight sent a chill coursing through the third elder's spine, prompting him to swiftly channel his inner strength in a desperate attempt to evade. Chapter 22. The disciple breaks through, returning to the pinnacle of qi refinement. Within the Shao family estate, a row of over a dozen majestic trees graced the landscape. The young man reclined languidly on the cool grass, his eyelids still heavy with slumber. He bore the appearance of a laborer who had just concluded his afternoon toil. Taking respite in this serene spot, a group of Shao family disciples, swords sheathed at their waists, strolled past. They cast a fleeting glance in his direction, their expressions tinged with disdain. The murmurs of several disciples resonated from a distance. This impostor has lingered with our Shao family for more than 2 months now. Yet the elders. Chapter 23. The Supreme Martial Arts. The Great Wilderness Captive Heaven Finger. In the courtyard, gazing at the wooden post reduced to splinters beside him, Xiao Huahua clenched his fists, yet a lingering sense of unfulfilled desire adorned his countenance. Had he managed to leave a more profound mark on the wooden post earlier, it would have delighted him for an entire day. Now, having effortlessly shattered the 8 wooden stakes, he felt a subtle dissatisfaction. Xiao Huahua bowed his head in deep contemplation. Upon breaking through to the qi refinement realm, my strength has surged dramatically, far exceeding that of ordinary individuals. If I were to confront the third elder once more, I am confident I could vanquish him within 10 moves. Chapter 24. A half-finger crushed Dongli City. Dongli City. The streets thrummed with vitality, filled with an orchestra of voices. Yet, in an instant, the lively throng fell into an uncanny silence. They lifted their gazes towards the sky. What was once an azure expanse became overshadowed as foreboding clouds amassed. This sudden alteration did not signal the approach of tempest. As the spectators stood in a stupor, a terrified shriek sliced through the air. Behold, what is that entity? The crowd turned, following the trajectory of the outstretched finger, and they beheld Chapter 25. Qi Refinement Level 1. A half-finger shook the heavens and nearly annihilated the city. In the grand hall of the Shao family, the 3 individuals beheld the immense finger suspended in the sky, momentarily struck with astonishment. Xiao Zhan reflected for a moment before declaring, "It seems that the immortal master typically maintains a low profile, seldom showcasing his formidable abilities." As he spoke, his brow knitted in deep thought, a spark of excitement illuminating his eyes. His intervention this time is undoubtedly for Huahua. It is certainly plausible that this magnificent display is meant to instruct Huahua. The other elders gazed upward at the celestial phenomenon, their expressions a blend of wonder and envy, collectively exhaling in awe. Chapter 26. Cultivating the Great Wilderness Prisoning Heaven Finger. I am a disciple of the Master. In a secluded corner of the backyard, the Grand Elder, noticing Xiao Zhan's extended silence, approached with a furrowed brow and addressed Xiao Huahua. Young patriarch, the Shao family has recently faced considerable challenges. The AO City clan, our long-standing adversary, has grown increasingly brazen. They not only thwart our endeavors at every opportunity, but have also dispatched individuals to seize one of our markets right before our eyes. Upon hearing this, Xiao Huahua immediately responded with fervent determination. Then let us confront them. Chapter 27. The Great Wilderness Prisoning Heaven Finger Entry. Return. Perfecting the Great Wilderness Prisoning Heaven Finger. In the grand hall of the AO City family, Lu Qing spoke candidly. Our unified endeavors have successfully integrated 3 of the Shao family's markets. In former times, Xiao Zhan would have already launched an offensive against us. Yet now, he remains ensconced within the confines of the Shao estate, silent as the grave. The Shao family is fated for destruction. The two tufts of white whiskers belonging to A.O. City Nan quivered as he chuckled. It appears we have indeed made an astute observation. The Shao family has roused a formidable adversary. Chapter 28. Hua. Mastery achieved. It is time to erase the stigma of worthlessness. In the secluded garden of the Shao family, Shao Hua gazed at the vast chasm before him, breath coming in ragged gasps. It felt as though every ounce of vitality had been drained from him in an instant, leaving him to collapse onto the earth. Yet, the dazed expression in his eyes quickly morphed into unrestrained elation. I have finally accomplished it. I have triumphantly unleashed the half-finger that shakes the heavens. His gaze remained tumultuous with exhilaration. It is truly inconceivable that this technique was conceived by me, Shao Hua. Chapter 29. The Shao Family. Shao Hua. In the opulent hall of the A.O. family, the expansive area was adorned with a sumptuous banquet. The flickering torches crackled, sending sparks into the night sky, while the rich aroma of sumptuous meats and fine wines permeated the air. A troupe of graceful and elegant dancers glided effortlessly, captivating the audience with their artistry. Before these enchanting performers, a group of distinguished middle-aged gentlemen engaged in spirited conversation, raising their glasses in toast. Among them were esteemed officials from both the A.O. family and the Lu family. At the heart of this gathering, a middle-aged man clad in black found himself encircled, as the words of several venerable elders reverberated around him. Chapter 30. A postnatal warrior? How did it shatter upon contact? In the grand hall of the A.O. family, Lu Qing approached A.O. Changnan with measured steps, directing a frosty gaze at Shao Hua. With a disdainful smirk, he observed, "Your prowess is indeed remarkable. The Shao family has so adeptly concealed its strengths that the entirety of Dongli City perceives you as a mere failure. Should you choose to remain in the shadows for a few more years, it is conceivable that none from either of our clans would stand a chance against you. Dongli City would transform into the private enclave of the Shao family." However, Lu Qing's tone took a turn, his smile chilling. It is a grave error to underestimate the capabilities of others. Chapter 31. A postnatal warrior? How could he possess such frailty? Within the A.O. family, Lu Qing and A.O. Changnan were still reeling from the preceding spectacle. In Dongli City, it was nothing short of remarkable for a youth of Shao Huahua's age to attain the zenith of the second tier. It could be argued that cultivating such prodigious talent with the unwavering support of a clan was no mere exaggeration. Yet, this young man had surpassed the confines of youthful brilliance, decisively besting A.O. Qingqi, who was merely at the nascent stages of postnatal cultivation. The chasm between their abilities was beyond comprehension. Chapter 32. The uproar from a few days prior? Merely my master imparting wisdom to this uninspired disciple. Within the confines of the A.O. family estate, A.O. Qingnan and his companions fixated their gaze upon Shao Huahua, their expressions shrouded in darkness. The young man's prowess had far surpassed their expectations. Even Lu Cheng, the postnatal mid-stage warrior they had summoned, clutched his sword with a firm grip, his countenance revealing his inner turmoil. Internally, he seethed. Had I foreseen this, I would have never been so imprudent as to acquiesce to A.O. Qingnan's entreaty. From whence did this prodigy emerge? He appears to be no more than 16 years of age. Chapter 33. Martial arts? This is celestial technique. Waves of energy cascaded downwards. The 20 or so first-tier experts positioned at the center reacted with alacrity, striving to flee to the peripheries. Yet within the realm beneath the half-extended finger, an imperceptible barrier appeared to ensnare them firmly in place. They could only gaze upwards in despair. In the eyes of a long-faced first-tier warrior, the half-finger swelled rapidly, accompanied by an oppressive force. The esteemed members of the A.O. family instantly comprehended the severity of the predicament. Chapter 34. Beneath the misty sect, the rejected young man. Within the Shao residence, an atmosphere of jubilation enveloped the surroundings. The humble demeanor exhibited by the A.O. City family and the Lu family has led to a notable augmentation of the Shao family's influence within Dongli City. All markets that were once lost by the Shao family have been reclaimed, and they have even acquired numerous additional ones. Following the submission of the A.O. City family and the Lu family, Dongli City has unequivocally transformed into a domain ruled by the Shao family, ushering them into their most prosperous era in nearly a decade. The entirety of the Shao family venerates the name of Shao Huahua, attributing all their current fortunes to his influence. However, only Shao Zhan and a select few. Chapter 35, Shao Huahua, arriving for the 3-year appointment. Before the gates of the Piao sect, 2 disciples clad in white were instantly stirred upon hearing the name Su Ling. Their eyes shimmered as if they had encountered a celestial being. The admiration in their gazes was unmistakable, nearly causing them to drool in awe. Chu Feng cast a casual glance at the two. It was evident that Su Linger enjoyed an extraordinary popularity within the Piao sect. It seems that before Shao Huahua takes the stage in this grand competition, he is destined to encounter considerable disdain. Chapter 36. Have you been in search of an otherworldly master all these years? Is it the person behind you? Within the Piao sect, on the celestial platform, amidst the 5 grand celestial stages and numerous corridors, countless pairs of eyes were fixated upon the young man standing on the martial arts stage. Curiosity, disdain, and mocking chatter reverberated from all directions. Is this Shao Huahua? He appears remarkably composed and confident. Merely a silver shell devoid of substance. Observe his skin, which clearly reveals him as nothing more than a third-rate martial artist. Indeed, who among us is not? Chapter 37. Shao Huahua. My master is the supreme master in the world. On the martial arts stage of the Piao sect, Shao Huahua surveyed his surroundings. The derisive laughter echoed in his ears, compelling him to clench his fists tightly. Is this all an illusion? Are otherworldly masters merely a figment of imagination? A cold sneer flickered within him, yet he steadied his heart and gradually relaxed his grip. In this moment, he longed to proclaim at the top of his lungs, asserting to all that otherworldly masters indeed exist. His master is the legendary otherworldly sage. However, at this moment, Chapter 38, the unveiling of Shao Huahua's strength. 6 months, from third-rate to post-heaven. Within the esteemed Piao sect, on the martial arts stage, a young girl was unexpectedly thrust backwards over 10 meters, landing awkwardly to the side. In stark contrast, the boy who should have succumbed stood unfazed. An oppressive silence descended upon the assembly as they beheld this astonishing spectacle. The onlookers remained in a state of disbelief. Countless disciples and elders found themselves at a loss for words. What transpired? Am I mistaken? The young master was genuinely forced back. Was it not claimed that Shao Huahua was merely a third-rate failure? Chapter 39. Is this your confidence? Utterly feeble. Below, on the grand celestial stage, numerous elders initially reacted with astonishment to the unfolding drama, only to subsequently furrow their brows in concern. The young man truly conceals his depths. We have all gravely underestimated him. Upon perceiving the distressed murmurs of the elders, Wushan maintained his composure, articulating, while the boy exhibits a certain level of stealth. He is still considerably overshadowed by Linger. After all, Linger is the young master, having been personally guided by myself and the esteemed innate elders, and has adeptly grasped the sect's divine technique, the Wind Sword Classic. Furthermore, she has also honed the sect's supreme skill, the mysterious sword art. Chapter 40. The postnatal realm? No, this is cultivation and chi refinement. On the martial arts platform, a colossal sword shadow loomed behind Su Ling, emanating a sharp exhalation as her gaze intensified. To compel me to unleash this technique, there has yet to be another among the younger generation of Zhangzhou who could achieve such a feat. You ought to take pride in that. Mysterious sword art, shadow of the sword strike. As her words resonated, the girl formed a hand seal, and the long sword before her resonated with a chilling hum. The immense sword shadow surged forward, accompanied by a tumultuous wave of force. Chapter 41. Grandmaster? Unworthy to bear my master's shoes. Upon the grand celestial platform, the elders of the mysterious sect exchanged glances, their astonishment overshadowing the shadow of their impending defeat. The second elder, bald and bearded, spoke with incredulity. Half a year ago, Shao Huahua was merely mediocre. In just 6 months, he has imparted such martial arts to him. Even a grandmaster could not accomplish such a feat seated beside him. Another elder furrowed his brow and murmured, could it be that Xiao Huahua fabricated this? The elders, upon hearing this, were taken aback. Chapter 42, Master Huahua, above Grandmaster, surpassing the pinnacle of martial arts. A Grandmaster? Not even worthy to bear my master's sandals. Xiao Huahua's resonant voice quelled the surrounding clamor. The crowd gazed in astonishment at Xiao Huahua, their eyes reflecting a shared astonishment at the boy's resolute demeanor. For a fleeting moment, they found themselves at a loss for words. After a while, the master of the Moon Sword sect on the celestial platform furrowed his brow in disbelief, stating, "A Grandmaster already occupies the zenith of the southern wilderness realm." Chapter 43, The Descent of the Five Grandmasters. The astonishing conspiracy of the dark underworld sect. In the celestial realm, 79 figures hovered gracefully in the air. The voice of the foremost individual was neither excessively loud nor overly soft. Yet, it resonated with formidable inner strength, reverberating through the atmosphere and permeating every corner. As the crowd absorbed these words, their expressions underwent a dramatic transformation. It was not mockery aimed at Shu Feng that stirred their emotions, but rather the overwhelming inner power that evoked a profound sense of fear within them. This was the inexplicable terror that lower-tier warriors experienced in the presence of their higher-tier counterparts. All were taken aback, their gazes fixed upon the celestial platform, observing the figures in the sky with expressions rife with concern and uncertainty. Chapter 44. A being whose realm is beyond description just observes? The masters of the various sects beheld the assembly of black-clad warriors encircling them, formidable beings of innate power, before finally directing their gaze skyward. In their taut pupils resided a current of boundless trepidation. In this moment, the actions of the Black Abyss sect were undeniably extravagant. The mere presence they emanated left the five grand masters breathless. Even a multitude of innate practitioners present found it difficult to endure, save for a select few concealed ancient masters. The members of the mysterious Cloud sect, along with numerous other attendees, were equally astounded. Chapter 45. The third layer of Qi training. A solo battle against two innates. In the celestial expanse above, a colossal shadow of a sword abruptly descended upon the frail old man. Just as Yin Xiao anticipated that this individual would undoubtedly suffer severe injuries, the old man unexpectedly smiled and, empowered by his internal force, swelled in size akin to a rubber ball. The immense sword shadow was forcefully arrested and ultimately disintegrated into dust by the vital energy exhaled by the man with his hair tied back. Before Yin Xiao and his companion could react, a flurry of fist shadows surged forth from behind. Boom! The misty mountain unleashed a formidable sword strike. Chapter 46, Breakthrough. The fourth layer of Qi training. Wind. As Xiao Huahua engaged in combat with Su Yin, another innate observer shook his head, scoffed, and charged forward. The clash of fierce fists against gentle palms reverberated through the air, compelling Xiao Huahua to grit his teeth and evade. Under such relentless assault, he found himself unable to maneuver with the fluidity he once possessed. His movements transitioned from countering strikes to mere evasion, leaving him bereft of the strength to retaliate. Succumbing to defeat incrementally. With a resounding slap, a gentle palm connected with Xiao Huahua's arm, propelling him backward as he steadied himself. He tasted the metallic tang of blood in his throat. Chapter 47. Xiao Huahua conquers two innates. Within the enigmatic confines of the mysterious Cloud sect, a multitude of gazes were riveted upon the martial stage, particularly on the youth standing resolutely at its center. It was as though a pack of wolves encircled a solitary lamb, each pair of eyes shimmering with insatiable avarice. Wu Shan and Su Linger were equally taken aback, their expressions a tapestry of astonishment as they beheld Xiao Huahua. The girl whispered, "What other secrets does this Xiao Huahua harbor? What further hidden advantages does he possess?" In her crystalline gaze, she beheld the boy confronting two innates, already unleashing a fervent onslaught. Chapter 48. Do you think I, as a Foundation Establishment Master, am not present? Such insult to my disciple. On the martial stage, Mo wanly gazed disdainfully at Xiao Huahua, suddenly erupting into laughter, Ah, how delightful! Who could have anticipated that my sojourn here would yield such unforeseen rewards? His eyes were transfixed on the luminous aura radiating from Xiaohua, overflowing with avarice. Such internal strength, capable of inducing tremors of submission within me, transcends the mastery of even the most esteemed practitioners. Amidst the multitude of scrutinizing gazes, Mo wanly chuckled softly and continued, I too have an eye for talent. Align yourself with me. And Chapter 49. Chu Feng takes action. The might of foundation establishment, surpassing the Grand Masters. Upon the martial stage, as his words resonated, a brilliant luminescence enveloped Chu Feng, his dark robe swirling dramatically. The wild, ethereal spiritual energy converged into a torrent, colliding with the immense black hand, unnoticed by the spectators. In a mere heartbeat, that gargantuan hand met no resistance, fracturing with a thunderous crash into countless scintillating fragments, dispersing into the ether. Mo Wanley's countenance was one of profound astonishment, his eyes wide as though he had beheld something utterly unfathomable. Chapter 50. Disciple, behold. This represents the zenith of Qi cultivation, the power of a single finger capable of confining the heavens and the earth. Within the Misty sect, the expressions of all present were blank with disbelief. Those who had not approached Chu Feng appeared visibly shaken, their eyes betraying a sense of awe. My actions throughout my life require no consideration for others. The Grand Master, merely an inconsequential insect. These two statements, devoid of any gravitas or explosive fervor, were uttered with such casual indifference, as if one were discussing a trivial matter. Yet, these words reverberated in the minds of the assembly like thunderclaps in a tranquil sky. Chapter 51. The Pursuit of Immortality, a path of cultivation profoundly divergent from martial arts. At the Misty sect, as they beheld the dissolution of half the martial platform, the assembly was engulfed in both dread and wonder. Each individual fixated upon the vast chasm, their minds haunted by the image of a finger akin to a celestial pillar. Quaking with trepidation, Mist Mountain inhaled deeply, articulating with deliberate slowness, is this the true essence of this technique? Xiaohua's earlier half-finger maneuver, though undeniably potent enough to subdue two innate masters, still lingered within the realm of speculation. Chapter 52. Is this merely a matter of instructing a disciple? How formidable must Chu Feng's true prowess be? At the Misty sect, the ground lay littered with an abundance of black-clad corpses. Xiaohua directed her gaze downward, noting a chilling sword resting atop one of the bodies, which transformed into countless flickering lights, disappearing from view. To annihilate dozens of innate beings with a mere wave of the hand surpassed the capabilities of any martial artist. Once she had calmed her tumultuous heart, Xiaohua nodded and declared, Yes, master. I shall diligently cultivate and strive to meet your expectations. Above, in the heavens, Chapter 53. Chu Feng stirs the entire Cangzhou, the frenzy for seeking outsiders. Within a tavern nestled in Cangzhou, the fragrant aroma of delectable dishes permeated the atmosphere as several youthful men, visibly exhilarated, engaged in animated discourse. Leaning in closer, one could discern their voices. Did you hear about the battle at the Misty sect? Exclaimed another young man, adorned in exquisite garments, who laughed heartily. In recent days, the entirety of Great Zhao has been abuzz, who remains unaware of it. As he spoke, a flicker of concern shadowed his expression. However, the whole of Great Zhao consists of merely 9 provinces. Chapter 52. Suan Tian Imotan Vendaben Chu Feng. Martial ancestor Xiaohua, the reborn Destiny Daughter, in the Silver Moon Dynasty. On the periphery of a lush forest, sunlight cascaded down, casting a golden hue upon the enchanting landscape, where wild rabbits and creatures occasionally flitted through the underbrush. At the very edge of this serene tableau flowed a serpentine stream. In the midst of this stream, upon the bank, reclined a slender young girl with cascading black tresses. The girl knitted her brow tightly, as if ensnared in a haunting nightmare. From the depths of the verdant forest, a formidable tiger, its gaping maw stained with crimson, gradually emerged, drawing closer to the motionless young girl sprawled upon the ground. Suddenly, Chapter 55, 7th Level of Qi Refinement, returned to mid-foundation establishment. 3 months had swiftly elapsed. In the majestic embrace of a towering mountain range in Qingzhou, a young boy sat in a meditative posture, his eyes firmly closed. His aura surged like an endless river, resonating unceasingly around him, causing the very sand and stones beneath to tremble restlessly in response to this formidable energy. As the spiritual energy coursed through myriad cycles, it re-entered his body. With each repetition, this energy appeared to grow increasingly turbulent, deepening the furrow on the boy's brow. Chapter 56, Exhibition of the Cultivator's Arts, Celestial Flying Vessel. Beyond the walls of Tsangzhou City, 100,000 fierce warriors of the Black Underworld Army encircled the city like ravenous wolves. An elder, surpassing 80 years in age, emanated an aura of formidable presence as he perched upon a magnificent steed, casting a scornful glance at the city fortifications. Upon the battlements, a tall and slender middle-aged gentleman, donned in scholarly attire, anxiously surveyed the scene. Tsangzhou City had been thoroughly ensnared by the dark forces, rendering it a solitary bastion. He turned to a companion adorned in crimson military garb to his left and inquired, "Have we received any word in response to the distress signal dispatched to the court?" Chapter 57, The Celestial Palace Descends. Is Chu Feng truly an immortal? In Tsangzhou City, an awe-inspiring torrent of energy surged forth, lifting the garments and hair of the onlookers, compelling all gazes to ascend towards the heavens. A magnificent flying vessel, exceeding 30 zhang in length, gracefully hovered above, casting its grand shadow over the entire expanse of Tsangzhou's fortifications. Upon this celestial craft, houses were clustered together, resembling an exquisite palace. The crowd beheld this extraordinary spectacle with disbelief. Even in their wildest dreams, such a vision seemed utterly implausible. Exchanging glances, the throng gasped in unison. "What marvel is this?" Chapter 58, Hiss. Xiao Huahua soars straight to Grandmaster in 3 months. With this contemplation, General Digong remained composed. He fixed his gaze upon the youthful figure aboard the flying vessel, standing with hands clasped behind him, and spoke deliberately. "Are you the audacious individual who dared to slay 5 grandmasters of my esteemed Black Underworld sect and over 30 innate experts? You are the first to commit such brazen slaughter of my disciples since the inception of our sect. However, it is widely acknowledged that I, General Digong, possess a benevolent disposition." With a disdainful snort, a faint smile graced the corners of his mouth. "I shall extend to you an opportunity. Relinquish the flying ship and retreat." Chapter 59, Lord Chu Feng of the Xiantian Immortal, an expert in engaging the inept. In the city of Tsangzhou, the atmosphere resembled that of a seething cauldron. Gasps of disbelief resonated from all directions, both within and beyond the city walls. The common folk wore expressions steeped in incredulity at the sight that unfolded before them. Yet, among the throngs of countless souls, one figure stood out unexpectedly. Lu Qingwu regarded the youthful silhouette against the sky, her gaze revealing no emotion. As it gradually shifted to the young man adorned in flowing azure robes aboard the vessel. In her previous life, she had lost track of the myriad tales she had encountered. Chapter 60, The 7th Layer of Qi Refinement, adequate to repel a grandmaster. The journey of immortal cultivation, a most dreadful prospect. Above the heavens, shadows and lights danced in a mesmerizing interplay. Below, the spectators stood agape, utterly astonished. The spectacle that unfolded shattered their preconceived notions. Could this Xiaohua truly rival a grandmaster? In just 3 months, could one truly progress from innate to grandmaster? Such a notion seems almost implausible. It was already remarkable to witness Xiaohua's elevation from a third-rate practitioner to the innate realm within a mere 6 months. Many had even doubted the veracity of his claims. Now, however, it appears that 3 days have morphed into half a year. Chapter 61, Behold, an immortal master. Absurdity. Why take action? As Xiaozhan's words resonated, the assembly stood momentarily astounded. Soon, Their trepidation evaporated, replaced by an ardent enthusiasm. Yun Xiao gradually exhaled, remarking, "Indeed, one can cultivate such a disciple. The prowess of an immortal master transcends our wildest imaginings. Even if the heavenly sovereign were to descend, and all 5 grandmasters of the great Zhao were to unite, they would likely falter before the immortal master." As they beheld the silhouette of the youth upon the flying vessel above, the crowd was enveloped by a wave of reassurance. Chapter 62. He has already vanquished grandmasters. You dare to label this merely the commencement of the cultivation journey? Chu Feng let out a soft chuckle, casting a glance at the 2 venerable figures ahead, and remarked, "My disciple, Xiaohua, has only just commenced his journey of cultivation. I have heard that your esteemed Black Ming sect possesses considerable wealth. If you wish to extend your apologies, perhaps you might consider offering some medicinal herbs." Upon hearing this, the lips of the heavenly sovereign and the earthly sovereign twitched uncontrollably. Just commence cultivation? To possess the prowess to subdue a grandmaster in combat. And this is merely described as the beginning of the cultivation path. What manner of cultivation is this? Below, upon the city walls, the crowd. Chapter 63. Was the celestial master Xiantian, Chu Feng, once a wastrel? Is that the reason he embraces all the wayward souls? In the Xiaojia residence. Master Xiaojia, could you not make an exception? I merely seek to convey my gratitude to the immortal master in person. Upon hearing this, Xiaozhan felt somewhat overwhelmed and let out a sigh, saying, "It is not that I am unwilling to assist, but it is simply impossible. The immortal master values serenity and does not wish for disturbances. Should I act abruptly, it would likely displease him." At this juncture, the scholarly figure, adorned with a black cap, slowly exhaled, saying this. Chapter 64. The 100 Arts of Immortal Cultivation. Sword Control. This is the true path of cultivation. In the courtyard of the Xiaojia, Chu Feng stood before Xiaohua, observing him intently before inquiring, "Huahua, what are your thoughts on the path of immortal cultivation?" Upon hearing this, Xiaohua's expression ignited with fervor as he proclaimed, "Master, this path of cultivation is truly extraordinary. Upon reaching the 4th layer of qi refinement, I could vanquish those in the innate realm. And upon attaining the 7th layer of qi refinement, I could stand against the formidable grandmasters who reign at the zenith of the world. In merely 3 months, I have traversed realms that ordinary martial artists would scarcely dare to envision. I comprehend." Chapter 65. This familiar identity, the chosen one? The sword pulsated with life as it spun elegantly, performing maneuvers unattainable by any common swordsman. It seemed to possess a spirit of its own, demonstrating remarkable dexterity before ultimately coming to rest in serene stillness. Chu Feng elaborated, "The mastery of sword manipulation encompasses the art of guiding the flying sword through spiritual energy. It resembles an intimate union with the spirit of the sword, enabling one to command it with the finesse of one's own fingers, as swift as lightning." Upon concluding his statement, Chu Feng delicately flicked his fingertip, prompting the sword to surge forth with unanticipated ferocity. Xiao Huahua could merely discern fleeting glimmers of cold light streaking across the courtyard. Chapter 66. Celestial Beings. Is the southern wilderness merely the tip of the iceberg? In the tranquil courtyard of the Xiao residence, as Chu Feng observed Lu Qingwu gradually embodying the essence of the technique once grasped by Xiao Huahua, a sense of reassurance enveloped him, prompting his return to his chamber. Standing before the table, he gestured with his hand. An luminous beam of white light cascaded across the surface, transforming into a pristine sheet of paper. Upon this paper was inscribed the celestial heart method that Lu Qingwu intended to bestow upon him, although he had yet to accept it. Following his recent advancement in foundational cultivation, both his intellect and perceptions had markedly heightened. With his enhanced memory, he merely cast a fleeting glance at the contents and effortlessly committed them to memory. Chapter 67. Summoning Master Chu Feng. For our great Zhao Emperor Master. 5 days hence. On the outskirts of Sangzhou City, shadows darted across the serene sky, descending before the city walls. An ominous black mist shrouded the heavens, casting dark clouds over the landscape. The citizens within the city, upon perceiving this, were seized by terror and dispersed in chaos. The once vibrant streets fell into an eerie silence, while the eyes of the illustrious families who had been watching turned upward in astonishment. What loomed above the city was none other than the forces that had recently come to besiege it. Chapter 68. Master Xiaozhan. Has the Xiao family ascended to prominence in merely 6 months? As these words resonated, the expressions of those present underwent a dramatic transformation. They beheld the guardian of great Zhao with incredulity. The master of the empire, the fiefdom of Cangzhou, such lofty aspirations. This echoed the sentiments of numerous sect leaders. The members of the Xiao family, confronted with such astonishing news, struggled to catch their breath, their faces aglow with exhilaration. Yet, Chu Feng, the central figure in this affair, remained unperturbed, merely casting a fleeting glance at Ming Wu. In this realm, ultimate power reigned supreme. Chapter 69. The Initiation of Sword Manipulation. The second disciple, Lu Qingwu. Overnight, Cangzhou City erupted into a frenzy. Various factions vied to breach the thresholds of the Xiao family. However, in stark contrast to the bustling front yard resembling a lively marketplace, the backyard of the Xiao residence felt like an entirely different realm, so serene that one could discern the faintest breaths. Xiao Huahua sat cross-legged upon the ground, a spiritual sword suspended before him, shimmering with a cold luminescence, subtly entwined with strands of radiant aura. The long sword appeared to rise and fall in harmonious rhythm with the boy's breathing. Chapter 70. The Imagination of Xiao Huahua. The junior sister must have endured considerable hardship in the past. In the courtyard of the Xiao family, Lu Qingwu, brimming with exhilaration, swiftly bowed and proclaimed, "Disciple Lu Qingwu pays homage to Master." She raised her gaze towards the two figures before her, feeling as though she were ensnared in a dream, her eyes still glistening with disbelief. "I have truly, indeed become a disciple of the Xiantian immortal." At that moment, her elation eclipsed even the exhilaration of her rebirth. It is noteworthy that in her previous life, despite being a formidable practitioner, she had never had the privilege to encounter the Xiantian immortal. Yet on this day, she had directly pledged her allegiance to him. Chapter 71. The Golden Core Ancestor. A radiant future beckons. Two disciples. Double the joy. In the secluded abode of the Xiao family, following a series of conversations, Lu Qingwu and Xiao Huahua had grown significantly more familiar with one another. The initial awkwardness that once lingered had faded away, giving way to increasingly effortless exchanges. Lu Qingwu, brimming with curiosity, posed a question. "Senior brother, are you aware of the level of power our esteemed master possesses?" Although she had often heard tales of the Xiantian immortal's illustrious reputation in her previous life, her comprehension of him was eclipsed by her familiarity with his disciples. She merely understood that this venerable master possessed extraordinary abilities. Chapter 72. Ascending to the Pinnacle of Foundation Establishment. The next phase of Qi cultivation. 3 months later, within the Xiao residence, a radiant beam of light suddenly ascended into the heavens, colliding with the celestial dome. A formidable aura emanated from the Xiao residence, reverberating throughout Cangzhou City. This extraordinary phenomenon compelled countless citizens to halt in their tracks and gaze in awe, naturally capturing the attention of the city's esteemed officials. Almost in unison, the leaders of various sects residing in Cangzhou emerged from their abodes, soaring into the sky, all entranced by the magnificent pillar of light at the heart of their sight. Overwhelmed by its immense power. Chapter 73. After Qi cultivation, the Foundation Establishment Realm. The path of Heavenly Foundation Establishment. 3 methods of foundation establishment. Within the chamber, Lu Qingwu composed herself, harmonizing the spiritual energy within and gradually ascending. Following her cultivation session, she encountered yet another breakthrough in her realm. As the vibrant spiritual energy surged within her, Lu Qingwu pondered. The journey of Qi cultivation is indeed an avenue that leads directly to immortality. Having previously attained the Golden Core realm, she could now distinctly evaluate her current energy levels. Although she now stood at the 5th level of Qi cultivation, even when translated into the realm of a martial artist. Chapter 74. Instruction. The Divine Sword Thunder Control Technique. In the chamber, the two suddenly rose, their faces alight with immense excitement. They gazed at Chu Feng, suffused with eager anticipation. The path to heaven. To be designated as a technique of the path to heaven by our master, how formidable must it be? Xiao Hua reminisced about the moment when their master imparted the knowledge of the Great Desolation prisoner's finger, casually referring to it as immortal techniques. This realization ignited a fierce determination within him, compelling him to clench his teeth in resolve. Foundation establishment. He was resolute in his pursuit to attain it with utmost urgency. Only by establishing his foundation promptly could he fully embrace his master's teachings. Chapter 75. That youngster uttered the Great Desolation prisoner's finger instantly. I'm not fabricating this. Chu Feng regarded Lu Qingwu's earnest demeanor with a nod of satisfaction. Internally, he could not suppress a smile. Possessing strength is indeed a remarkable advantage. By effortlessly conjuring several bolts of celestial lightning and unleashing the full might of foundation establishment, he could create a truly awe-inspiring spectacle. The resultant force is sufficient to instill dread. Now, having attained such foundational perfection, one can only speculate on the terrifying potency that the subsequent stages of Golden Core and Nascent Soul might entail. This exemplified an extraordinary level of destructive capability, further amplified by his unwavering commitment to the rigorous training of his two disciples. Chapter 76. I am fire. I'm only familiar with 4 words. Great wilderness capturing heaven finger, the elder concluded, leaving all in a state of stunned silence. The ministers' faces flushed, brimming with disbelief. One strike was sufficient to vanquish the midterm grandmaster, Elder Dingley, to achieve such a remarkable feat. Could it be that the newcomer was a peak grandmaster? The peak grandmaster embodies the true zenith of the southern wilderness realm. Such prodigious experts are exceedingly rare, even throughout the vast expanse of the southern wilderness. The ministers exchanged glances, murmuring in deep contemplation. Great wilderness capturing heaven. Chapter 77. An invincible grandmaster is unworthy of carrying shoes for a young friend. In the great wilderness, the capturing heaven finger. As the words resonated, a tremendous surge of energy enveloped every corner of the palace. The once tranquil clouds in the sky began to contort into foreboding dark masses, swirling with an ominous presence. A stifling, oppressive aura permeated the hearts of the onlookers. Amidst the sea of terrified gazes, a terrifying entity gradually emerged from the black clouds, revealing itself to the astonished crowd. They beheld a colossal hand, an immense finger extending from the heavens. The 2 elders stood paralyzed in disbelief. Chapter 78. Little friend Fire, choose any concubine you desire. In the illustrious great Li Imperial City, Xiao Huahua did not indulge in the humble disposition of the Elder of Fire. Rather, he mirrored the composure of Chu Feng, clearing his throat and declaring with an air of confidence, I am Xiao Huahua. At the mention of his name, the crowd below quaked in astonishment, their eyes widening in disbelief as they exchanged incredulous glances. Could this truly be the legendary Xiao Huahua hailing from the Great Zhao? How could this be? Wasn't this Xiao Huahua just? Chapter 79. Second Disciple. A breakthrough to the 8th layer of Qi training. Within the Great Li treasury, the Emperor of Great Li suddenly widened his eyes, unable to fathom the words of his elder. Bestowing a concubine? A chill cascaded down his spine, as the fear of impending betrayal loomed over him. Yet, the might of Great Li was indeed upheld by the elder, and in the presence of such a formidable figure, he found himself compelled to endure this bitter reality. Under the expectant gaze of the Elder of Fire, Xiao Hua raised an eyebrow, pondering the ramifications of the bestowed concubine, as echoes of his past exploits in the Forbidden Forest reverberated through his thoughts. Chapter 80. The Path of Vengeance for the Second Disciple. In the Silver Moon Dynasty, Xiao Huahua surveyed his surroundings. The black-tiled roofs and lively streets evoked memories of Great Zhao. The willows danced gracefully in the gentle breeze along the riverbank. The streets here bore a striking resemblance to those of Great Zhao, yet the inhabitants radiated a vibrant and healthy complexion, likely a boon from the amiable climate. Inhaling the crisp air deeply, Xiaohua whispered to himself as he observed the thoroughfare. The Silver Moon Dynasty, is it? My junior sister appears to be the princess of this realm. Chapter 81. The Revelation of the Second Disciple's Might. Effortlessly vanquishing a peak grandmaster. Their transgressions must be addressed. Lu Qingwu's voice resonated with intentional clarity, each syllable piercing the ears of the assembly, evoking a sudden tremor in their hearts. The expressions of the ministers shifted through a complex tapestry of emotions. The implications of Lu Qingwu's declarations, coupled with the schemes of the empress, were unmistakable to all present. However, the formidable might of the Xianyi sect, lurking ominously behind the Empress Dowager, was truly formidable. With 3 grandmasters among their ranks, no faction within the entire dynasty could dare to contend with them. Thus, the Xianyi sect had nearly grasped dominion over the realm. Chapter 82. Lu Qingwu, the Invincible Grandmaster. Within the Grand Hall, the clash of swordlight met the shadow of the Black Mountain. Waves of energy rippled through the air, causing the walls of the hall to begin fracturing. Behind the ethereal silhouette of the Black Mountain stood an elderly man with white hair, exerting all his internal strength to withstand the onslaught. The fury etched upon his countenance gradually transformed into disbelief. In mere moments, the exertion turned his face a deep crimson. Ultimately, the Black Mountain, solidified by his qi, revealed numerous fissures, leaving the old man's eyes wide with astonishment. Chapter 83. The Divine Sword's Thunderous True Method. Cataclysmic Destruction. With a focused gaze upon Lu Qingwu, Xianqi conveyed his thoughts to the remaining 2 through telepathy. This Lu Qingwu must have stumbled upon an extraordinary opportunity. By all means, we must secure her. Should we seize this chance, we may very well ascend to the celestial realm. The others regarded Lu Qingwu with avaricious anticipation, nodding fervently. Xianyi sneered, "This young girl is indeed remarkable. It appears we can no longer restrain ourselves. We must unleash our full might." Chapter 84. The Celestial Descends. Beyond the southern wilderness. In a tea house nestled within the imperial city, Xiaohua languidly savored his tea. Suddenly, a furrow of concern creased his brow. The water in his cup, which should have remained tranquil, began to ripple with fervor. Startled, Xiaohua cast a glance out the window. Beyond the perception of ordinary eyes, the sky was graced with a soft, resplendent luminescence. In the distance, dense thunderclouds loomed ominously. Xiaohua's gaze sharpened with intensity. Is this the thunderclouds summoned by the Divine Sword's thunderous true method? Chapter 85. How can the cultivators fear the warriors? All eyes were drawn to the Empress, whose countenance was marred by an artifice of distress. She proclaimed, "Esteemed lords, whatever tribulations you encounter, this humble servant shall endeavor to assist." However, she lamented, the Silver Moon Dynasty finds itself in a precarious situation, relentlessly pursued by adversaries. The dynasty teeters on the brink of ruin, and it seems there is scant energy remaining to address your concerns. As she articulated her plight, she cast a venomous glare at Lu Qingwu. Surrounded by formidable figures, she could only exploit her status to shift the impending crisis squarely onto Lu Qingwu's shoulders. Chapter 86. Beyond the southern wilderness. The 3 Celestials. In the square, Lu Qingwu disregarded the woman's desperate pleas for retreat. With sword in hand, she advanced resolutely toward the Empress. The Empress, gripped by terror, cast anxious glances at Su Qiu and the others, fearfully dragging herself backward across the ground. "Master, save me. If I perish, the whereabouts of the Changchun seal will remain forever unknown." Su Qiu noted that Lu Qingwu did not take offense at her words. Instead, she furrowed her brow in displeasure. In such a desolate place, how dare anyone challenge her? Chapter 87. The 8th Layer of Qi Refinement. The clash of martial Tao and celestial beings. The cloud-piercing finger collided with the thunderous light. In that fleeting moment, the world around dimmed, as all radiance was fiercely snatched away by the violent shockwaves. The ground surged like the undulating surface of the sea, violently upheaving and creating tidal waves of mud soaring hundreds of meters high. The flat terrain within 100 meters instantaneously transformed into a vast pit. The two waves of energy swiftly dissipated. Amidst the billowing smoke, Lu Qingwu staggered back several dozen meters before barely managing to regain her footing. On the opposite side, the elder's figure was also propelled forcefully, covered in dirt and debris, landing awkwardly 100 meters away. Chapter 88. Senior brother Xiao Huohua is here. Who dares to bully my junior sister? A young man approached, his palm emanating a wave of spiritual energy, meandering leisurely toward the scene. Upon sighting him, Lu Qingwu's eyes shimmered with joy as she exclaimed, "Senior brother, what brings you here?" The newcomer was none other than her esteemed senior brother, Xiao Huohua. Upon gazing upon his visage, her heart felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Senior brother has arrived. Even though he has yet to ascend to the foundation establishment stage, with his perfected chi refinement and mastery of the great wilderness prison sky finger, there is no need for her to retreat today. Chapter 89. Huohua, mere 3 celestial beings. Su Qiu withdrew to the periphery. However, Xiao Huohua did not grant her a moment's reprieve, swiftly closing the distance. Another whip-like kick was directed at her. In a fleeting moment of distraction, she nearly failed to respond, raising her arms to protect herself. Bang! Her form was once again thrust several dozen meters away. Observing her trembling, bloodied arm, Su Qiu seethed. Cursed be it! How formidable is this youth's inner strength? Is he an infinite abyss? Chapter 90. The perfected chi refinement's finger prisons the world. As Lu Qingwu watched Xiao Huohua's retreating silhouette, she nodded in reassurance, choosing to refrain from further involvement. After all, the individual before her was destined to become the martial ancestor. How could the mere trifles of 3 celestial beings obstruct his path to greatness? Xiao Huohua advanced a step. His dark eyes surveyed the 3 figures approaching him, ultimately resting upon the woman. The power radiating from her was more than thrice as potent as before. Such martial prowess. Chapter 91. Huohua, I have an unsurpassed celestial being behind me. Within the imperial city, a cohort of ministers huddled together amidst the remnants of the palace, quaking in trepidation. Their eyes were drawn to the vast chasm that had devoured the entire front square, leaving them parched and rendered speechless. Standing beside the chancellor, the historian's eyes widened in disbelief, his mind swirling as he stammered. Such godlike powers are simply unheard of, utterly unprecedented. The minister's worldview shattered entirely in the instant that the colossal finger descended from the heavens. As a high-ranking official of the dynasty, Chapter 92. Assembling the 5 great spiritual artifacts. On the distant palace roof, Chu Feng nodded in agreement with Xiao Huohua's sentiments, clearly delighted. Indeed, you are an exceptional disciple of mine. The trust you place in me is profound. He lifted his sleeve, a flicker of resolve illuminating his gaze. To honor the faith my esteemed disciple has in me, I shall henceforth enforce even stricter discipline upon both of you. In doing so, I shall soon ascend to immortality and attain the status of a true, supreme celestial being. Meanwhile, Xiao Huohua suddenly quivered for reasons unbeknownst to him, a chill coursing down his spine. Chapter 93. Golden Core Ancestor Chu Feng. Huohua achieves foundation establishment. Xiao Huohua approached Lu Qingwu, inquiring with perplexity, "Junior sister, what troubles you?" As he articulated his thoughts, his gaze was drawn to the jade stone ensconced within the intricately carved recess of the wall. The jade, a lush green hue, had been meticulously fashioned into the form of a qilin, its base reminiscent of a seal. Lu Qingwu delicately extricated the jade, his fingers gliding over its surface. This is the coveted artifact pursued by the so-called young master of the Su family, a celestial martial artist. When Su Qiu had previously interrogated Empress Wang, Lu Qingwu had also been observant, committing certain details to memory. Chapter 94. The True Celestial Technique. Azure Sky Dragon Transformation. Lu Qingwu beheld the surging waves of energy rising towards the heavens, her eyes ignited with passion. My senior brother has recently transcended into the foundation establishment realm. Yet he stands on par with martial artists of the fifth or even sixth tier of the celestial realm. This is achieved without even resorting to the great wilderness sealing heaven finger. Should he choose to wield the great wilderness sealing heaven finger, could he not rival even the late-stage celestial martial artists? Contemplating this notion, even Lu Qingwu, with her usual poise, found it challenging to stifle her astonishment. Meanwhile, Chu Feng reclined under the sun upon the tiles of the Liqiu Palace, a broad smile gracing his visage. In his perspective, Chapter 95, Azure Sky Dragon Transformation reaches perfection at the first layer. Chu Feng reclined leisurely upon the heavenly silk quilt, inhaling the fragrant aroma of sandalwood, which enveloped him in a state of gentle intoxication. The treasures within the imperial palace were indeed extraordinary. I had long yearned to experience this, having glimpsed it in dramas during my previous life. Within the palace, the chambers were primarily reserved for concubines or the quarters of eunuchs and maidservants. Given Chu Feng's esteemed status, the Silver Moon Emperor would undoubtedly hesitate to assign him to the quarters of servants. Even the side hall had been transformed into the most magnificent sleeping chamber in the entire imperial city, with the attendants meticulously arranging the finest new furnishings. Chapter 96, The Lin Family. Lin Yuanli. Beneath a certain peak in the 10,000 Great Mountains, a tiger demon, adorned with slender wings and towering 6 meters in height, lunged menacingly at a young boy ahead. The furious roar of the tiger demon propelled the boy several dozen meters away, struck by the terrifying sound wave. As he descended to the ground, Lin Yunli grasped his bruised arm, casting a glance back at the colossal tiger demon. The creature appeared to be toying with him, advancing with a disdainful stride. He beheld the tiger's fist-sized emerald eyes and its cavernous maw, poised to consume him. Chapter 97, The Future Flame Emperor. Third disciple of the Xintian, Celestial Sovereign. Aboard the flying vessel, Lu Qingwu fixed her gaze upon Lin Yunli, her eyes flitting back and forth, her heart swelling with joy as she pondered. It cannot be mistaken. It is indeed him, Lin Yunli, the second disciple of the Xintian immortal sovereign from a past existence. The Flame Emperor, Lin Yunli. Before her knelt a young man, his cheeks bearing the traces of scrapes, yet unable to mask the exquisite features that adorned his visage. It was said that Lin Yunli, the Flame Emperor, was the disciple discovered by the Xintian immortal sovereign upon his emergence from the 10,000 Great Mountains. Furthermore, judging by his appearance, it appeared that now. Chapter 98, Fire Fire. Why does this Lin Yun evoke a sense of uncanny familiarity? Aboard the soaring vessel, Xiaohua gazed at the youth before him, inexplicably enveloped in a sensation of recognition, as though their destinies had intertwined in a bygone era. Meanwhile, Chu Feng observed the young man with keen intent, a subtle smile gracing his lips as he mused. This familiar tale cannot be mistaken. Indeed, having just emerged from the southern wilderness, I am fated to encounter a child of destiny. Moreover, should Lin Yunli's assertions prove accurate, the martial prowess beyond the southern wilderness is undeniably formidable, teeming with talents that transcend the ordinary. Chapter 99. My master is an ancient immortal. On the flying vessel, Lin Yunli sat with his head bowed, ensnared in a labyrinth of uncertainty. Beside him, Xiao Huahua, unable to suppress his impatience any longer, declared, "Listen here, young one. My master is an ancient immortal. The journey of cultivation is a magnificent path, unattainable to your kind. It is not a mere pursuit of martial arts that can be likened to it. To cultivate is to embark on a journey that leads directly to the divine. What holds you back from this destiny?" Xiao Huahua sensed an extraordinary potential within this young man. Chapter 100. The celestial vessel descends upon Qingyun City. In Qingyun City, warriors from diverse backgrounds raised their eyes to the heavens. A symphony of astonishment erupted as the throng buzzed with exhilaration. What spectacle is this? A palace soaring through the firmament. From whence does this magnificent force originate, capable of such splendor? The advent of such an entity is indeed a boon for us in Qingyun City, in a realm that venerates the formidable. The sight of a palace-like celestial vessel gliding through the sky is nothing short of breathtaking. Such a tumult could scarcely escape the attention of the esteemed families and influential powers within the city.